ahead and get started. Welcome, parents, caregivers, those of you that are here with us today. Thank you so much for being here. It is truly remarkable when we see parents, caregivers, those that have an interest in seeing their children excel, be here on a Saturday when you could be doing anything else, but you're here with us today. It's truly an honor, and we really appreciate it. Welcome to Equipando Padres Academy Live. This is our first offering for this year for parents and caregivers. We're excited that you're here. Want to take a quick minute to give a thanks to our sponsors, RTX and UEF. They have helped us along the way to get to this point to be able to offer this to you. We have a jam-packed day with a lot of content, a lot of good information, some opportunity for you guys to also talk amongst yourselves and talk with, hear from our facilitator, and also just really absorb any and all information that you can from today. The goal for today is that you all learn, take something from it, and really just use it to help somebody else that can benefit from it. Jump to the next slide. So I want to do a quick presentation of the team. We are a team of four. We're small but mighty. Want to start off on the left-hand side. I want to introduce Dr. Dinah Martinez, who's not with us today, but she is our senior director for our programs. And then Liliana Gonzalez, she's actually with us today, but she's in the Spanish room working that one. And so Dinah and Lily are two people that I work with every single day. And then we have Ana Rodriguez, who I'll give her an opportunity to present herself if she would like to, and give her a chance to just say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ana Rodriguez. I live in DC, and I am in charge of content for this event. So enjoy, everybody, and welcome.
Thank you, Ana. Yeah, she does a great job with our content, which is the stuff that you guys are seeing today. And then myself, I live in Houston, Texas. I'm the director of programs for pre-college and parent engagement. Super thankful to be here with all of you today. As we kick off, we have a couple of guests that we want to introduce and give some time to introduce themselves and say a couple of words. One of the first people that I want to introduce is my good friend Sonia from NAF. Sonia, she'll give a couple of words of NAF, but they are one of the organizations that we partnered with today to get parents to join us today. So Sonia, I'll give you the floor to introduce yourself and give a couple of remarks regarding NAF.
Thank you, Fernando. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Inam. I'm here from NAF. We are a national nonprofit dedicated to preparing young people for college and career success. It's wonderful to be here with you all, and especially amongst these amazing facilitators and panelists. And we're so grateful to be collaborating with SHIP and the Equipando Padres team on outreach to the NAF network to connect parents, family members, and caregivers like all of you to workshops and events like this. As a little background on NAF, we support a network of small learning communities within public schools across the country, and we refer to those as NAF academies. So all our academies are geared towards exposing high school students to growing career industries like engineering, information technology, finance, and also many more other career paths. So some of you may actually have students in a NAF academy right now, even if you might not know it. And as part of our educational model, we work with incredible partners like SHIP, and we can't wait for you to see what they have in store for you today. If you do want to learn more about NAF, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll post my email in the chat. Again, my name is Sonia Nam, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you, Sonia. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the words. And just to reiterate what she mentioned, not all of you are here know about NAF, but if you do want to know more about it, definitely encourage you to reach out to her and learn about the different possibilities and opportunities in your area. And so with that being said, I wanted to next introduce a dear friend of mine. She is a board member. She's one of the most dedicated chef people you will ever know. But we have the pleasure and the opportunity to have Ms. Karen Santos with us today. Karen is with our board of directors with SHEP. She's been a SHEP member knows the ins and outs of the organization, and really truly honored that she's here with us today. And I wanted to give her an opportunity to share a couple of words before we kick off today's event.
Yes, thank you so much, Fernando. Welcome everybody to the Equipando Padres program. I am so excited to have you guys here today. I'm also so excited to be sharing some intro and welcoming thoughts with you as I was in your shoes not too long ago. As Fernando mentioned, I have been a SHIP member from the very beginning, ever since my freshman year of college. So I've definitely seen the ways that this organization is able to change your life and ultimately transform where you are in your journey and potentially get you to your next steps. So with that being said, at SHIP, we definitely understand the challenge is that Hispanic families are facing in supporting first generation college students, and especially those pursuing engineering careers. The Equipado Padres program is our dedicated response to bridging the gap in presenting parent programming and incorporating crucial elements to help our Hispanic culture by addressing specific challenges in that pursuit of engineering education. I also want to note that, this program isn't only about equipping parents, it's also about empowering families to be the best contribution and that integral support to their students' success. So whether you're a parent, a relative, or a friend that's just eager to contribute to the success of any student in this room today, I want you to know that Equipados Padres is here for you, as well as SHIP. And together we can build a supportive community that helps propel our students towards academic and professional excellence. So thank you so much today for joining us in this transformative journey. I'm so excited for us to empower our students, strengthen our communities, and pave the way for a future filled with success for achievement. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you all here. And if anyone always needs anything, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you. Back to Fernando.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the kind words, and like she mentioned, this is why we're here. When we can get our volunteers and our board members to join us on a Saturday, it really is a true testament to how we believe these programs impact the lives of others. So thank you again to all of you for joining us today. So without further ado, really, we're going to kick off today's event. Get comfortable, find your favorite snacks, do whatever it is you need to do. We're excited to kind of kick off Equipando Padres Academy and have you all here. So before we introduce our facilitator for today, I wanted to share with you the quick promo video that we've made. And if you've seen it before, it's one of those, I see it multiple times, and I actually show it to my mom. And it's a good kind of like foundation for us to understand why are we here, what are we trying to do, and what is today going to be about. So I will, again, as technology allows, I will play this, and hopefully you can hear it and you can see it. Fingers crossed that we have no significant technology issues today.
Wanted to, go to a good college and get a good experience, but I didn't have anyone to turn to. The Equipando Padres program will focus on providing these parents the knowledge and tools to better support their children earning engineering degrees.
I take a lot of pride in knowing that the hard work that my parents did to support me and the work that I'm doing, studying my career, is an example for their kids and my cousins and extended family. Doesn't matter whether you're a first gen or not, all possibilities are out there if you're willing to work with them.
Help us on our mission to empower parents through the Equipando Padres program.
All right. So with that, I will hand it over to our facilitator for today, Jose. I will stop sharing my screen so you can take over. and kind of let you take it over from here.
Gracias, Fernando. Thank you, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Jose Herrera. I'll be the facilitator here in speaking to you here from Houston. As I start getting everything ready here, this is probably like not probably, I've done over a dozen of these sessions, similar to the ones we have right now. The reason I'm saying that is I want to share a little bit of the power of this session, and also to go ahead and welcome you and include you into the conversation. Keep in mind that this is for you as a parent. So we're all here to serve you. And in saying that, what I want to say is go ahead, and we're all here to support each other. So go ahead, don't be embarrassed. This is your time. Chime in, ask questions, unmute yourself, interrupt it. We might have technical difficulties. We might not, hopefully. But this is your time, and we're all here for you. So feel right at home. I mean, hopefully for most of us, we are at home, but feel right at home and go ahead and just open up, right? This is a no judgment zone, and whatever we say here stays here. So yeah, just get comfortable, really hoping that we add some value to you today. I know that a few hours on a Saturday is very valuable for all of us. So if we're spending that time, I'm hoping that we can get some value out of this for you. All right, so let's get started. I want to kickstart with some acronyms, because I think many of us have been in Equipando Padres or SHIP. We start throwing acronyms, and I think folks that are in the community, we don't know them. So first of all, let's start with SHIP. SHIP is the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and guys, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on these acronyms. So if you hear SHIP, that's what that's referring to. You might also hear EP. EP is just acronym for Equipando Padres. So that's something you might hear too. So if you hear those two, that's what that's referring to. But like I said, if you have any questions of anything that's thrown out here, stop us and just we will get it answered either through the chat or live. Okay, so why we are here today. This right here, this session, the reason that we exist, our spirit, our DNA here at Equipando Padres, is all about supporting families and getting our first generation, especially our first generation students, first generation to college, and I'll get a little bit into a definition later, how we can support them along the way. And in order to do this, we are really going to focus on umbrella of three, right? There are three different umbrellas. One is the actual knowledge of college, what it is to be an engineer, what it is to be in college. Second is tools and resources that, if I'm not mistaken, they've been mailed to you or will be mailed to you. And then what kind of supports do you need for STEM? That's another great acronym, by the way. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics. So if you hear that, that's what STEM is all about. So supporting STEM success. STEM in itself, it's a different kind of beast within colleges. So I think it's worth the conversation for us to have on what supports need to be in place in order to support a student that goes through STEM. So that's why we're here today. How will we reach our goals? Now, what is going to undergird all this that we're discussing is going to be incorporating, there is an element of a cultural, even if you take out ethnicity or race or any of that, they're just also just geographically, there's different cultures. So incorporating those cultural aspects with college, also addressing the challenges, like what are those obstacles, what are those barriers that, especially as a parent, I know for myself, I've already put 2 of my students through college, and there's so many challenges that even for me as an educator, I didn't understand. So we're really trying to address those. And finally, really speaking to the value as a parent, as how much of a contributor you are and in the success of your student, especially as they move forward through college. Okay. At this point, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in the chat. This is the guidebook that you either have received, hopefully, or you will receive. It's a fabulous little tool. When you flip it over, it's actually bilingual in Spanish and English. One side is Spanish, flip it over, it's going to be in English, and vice versa. I welcome to you once you receive it to really dig into it because there's so many nuggets in there. If you do have the guidebook, as you can see right now, there's some pages right there. Those pages are going to determine the main sections that we're going to cover today. And you're going to see on the bottom right side of the presentation, the slide deck, what section we're on as we progress. And that's what that's referring to. But if you don't have the guidebook, no worries. I'm sure you'll receive it, and you do not need it at all for this session.
Hi, Jose, real quick, let me chime in while you change over to the next one.
Yeah.
The guidebooks and the swag and the things that we typically give out. So you will notice that there are a couple of folks that if you haven't been reached out or if you haven't been asked anything, there are some folks that are taking attendance. Those that we collect today, we will be sending out all of those kits Monday. They're ready to be processed. They just, we wanted to verify the attendance for today. So you're going to receive all of the kits on sometime next week, but they'll be shipped out on Monday. Actually, in the chat, what I'm doing is I've dropped links to the virtual guidebook. It's the same exact thing as what you will receive physically in the mail, and it actually, I believe I have one right here, somewhere around here. Oh, here it is. It looks just like this, and so you'll receive a physical copy of it. It's really nice. I keep it on hand. Just you never know when something here is useful to look at. But if you wanted to follow along today, you can use the digital one that I put in the chat, and I'll try to put it in a couple times throughout the day so you can see it in case it gets lost in the chat.
Thank you, Fernando. And anytime I'm in these sessions, I love doing the digital ones just because we get folks from all over the place. So how about we start with the little icebreaker? Just throw in your name and where you're from if you're visiting for the first time, or actually if you're a volunteer. That way we kind of get here cozy with each other and know where we're all from. I also don't like that everything's set up under the agenda under Eastern time. I think personally, I'm a little biased. I think Central time is better. But here what you'll see the time is going to be the time that you have for the agenda are in Eastern time. So you're going to have to adjust for Pacific and Central. So this is the agenda for the day, ladies and gentlemen. Here is what we're going to do. But like I said, all of this will be recorded. So feel free if you have to take a break, if you have to jump off, jump on, do that. But more importantly, just come in and join the conversation. Okay. As with any large group gathering, there's always a set of norms that we want to follow, just so we're all on the same page, kind of like the rules that we all agreed to. Here are the 4 norms for the day. Understand that as we share, there are going to be so many stories shared. And that's probably the most beautiful part that I see in these type of events is we really open up because we all have our own story and we all like to share a story. We're going to have our volunteers, we're going to have our parents. But as that happens, let's just be mindful to be respectful of everybody's experience. And secondly, some of these conversations get deep. I know for me, I will share some of my own experiences with my own children, but let's just keep that here. Let's keep it confidential. And I know we all have a story, and once we get into this, we're all going to want to share our story. But remember, there's only a limited amount of time, and what we really want to do, make sure, is that you get as much value as you can from all of us and all the wonderful volunteers that have walked that path before, but that hopefully your children or your loved ones are going to walk. So let's keep the communication concise. And finally, just be open to learning something new. Every time I come here, I always learn something from somebody. So let's be open to that. All right. So our next little activity, and I express what the intent is of us being here, but you tell me, what are your expectations for today in one word? Is it share, open up, learn? And I'm taking notes right here, so hopefully we can hit all of them. So go ahead, take let's say 2 minutes to go ahead and put into the chat. What are your expectations for today? I'll open up the chat a little bit. Knowledge. Awesome, Leslie. Oh, so many folks from so many different places. Long Beach, I see you. Uruguay, oh, okay. Originally from Uruguay, I read that wrong. Seattle, awesome. California, Chicago. Love it. Learn, empowerment. Ooh, love that word, Patricia. Empowerment. I think that's a key. Love it, love it, love it, folks. Well, welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get to the meat of this. So first, let's talk about white college. I know, as you know, this is a question that I feel like through the generations, we always ask this question, but I think so more so even now with all the rhetoric of college is too expensive, loans, you don't need a degree, all that good stuff. I think it's important to address this question because I know for myself with my teenage sons and daughters at some point, this question came along. And I will here at Equipando Padres, we want to share a little bit of what we see as the value of white college. So before we get into that, let me turn it over to you. And let me ask you, think about the biggest dreams. We all have dreams for our children. Think about your biggest dreams. What's your biggest dream for your child? What hopes do you have for their future? So take a few seconds, digest that. Biggest dream for your child and what hopes do you have for your future? And this is going to be our first breakout. So Fernando, go ahead and break us out into groups. And I'm excited to get small groups. See you in a bit.
So you are going to get a message to enter a breakout room. Please accept it. These can change and will change if they need to later on as we get more parents, but just you know, the room that you're in right now will start off here. Volunteers, facilitators, we already talked about it earlier, but I'll send y'all the breakout rooms right now. If you get a message, go ahead and accept it, join it. I think most of us that are here, Ana, Hugo, Diana, I think since you guys are co-hosts, you can jump to whichever one you'd like to go to. Feel free to just kind of hop in. We have a pretty small number right now that we figured we could, we didn't have to have a lot, but I think what I'll do in the next breakout is I'm going to make them a little smaller, less than 5.
Okay, sounds good. I think I'll jump into room 2 with Jackie. It seems like she's probably the only volunteer in that one.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, Merlinda. I see that you're on. You should have gotten a message to join. I don't know if you need me to send it again. I'll send you another one to room 1. And if you see it, you can join that one. Anna, for the next round, I'm gonna make them a little smaller.
Yep, that's fine.
Hi, Rena. She's here. Let me see. Hi, Rena. Welcome in. We're in a breakout session right now. I'm gonna send you to one of the breakout rooms, and then you can join us back in a couple of minutes for the full session.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is this open to African Americans?
It's open to anybody.
Okay. I was just making sure before
Yeah,
I
please
even went
join
through.
us.
I'm so sorry. That's what I was
No,
like.
you're
I
good.
was
Please
making
join us.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll join. Thank you.
No problem. I think 11:30 is when they close, Jose. 11:30. Well, the dreaded 12:30 Eastern time, but it's 11:30 for us.
Yeah, I'm joining through. There's some great conversation happening. I'm very excited.
Cool.
It's funny because I had a call the other day with like people from all over too, so they just said X30 or like X15 or that way it's
Oh,
just like
that's a good idea.
yeah,
That's a
because
really good
different time zones makes things confusing. So just a thought.
That is a good idea. I like that. I like
I'm
that a
glad I could
lot.
contribute. I'm glad I could contribute.
And Fernando, can you get the video for the admissions ready on your end? I know Lily sent it. Just have it when we get to that part. I might
Let
switch.
me, yeah, let me look for it and I'll get it up.
Appreciate it.
Yep. It's a YouTube video, right? Okay. let me
Right.
look.
Yeah, it's a YouTube. It's on the chat.
Do you know which video specifically is it? I'll ask Lily. Hi, Boris. Welcome. We were in breakout rooms. We're coming back from breakout rooms, so you
Oh,
will see more of the attendees come in.
okay. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think it's gonna close on its own in 60 seconds.
Will I be going back into the meeting?
Yeah, you'll be in the full the main, I guess the main stage you could call it.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey y'all, welcome back. Oh man, I love to hear these conversations. It's crazy. I literally right now, Felipe took me back to Miami when like a year ago we were doing one of these, and it's amazing how life changes. Like in one year, he started telling me how he started sharing a story with the breakout room, how he's from Miami, now in Seattle, and doing these amazing things. And that's what it's all about, folks. That's what it's all about. Just making sure that we chase our dreams. Having, in this case, if you're a parent, have your parents your students, your children chase a dream, and execute. So congrats, Felipe, and everybody who shared the story. I know I heard Saul's a little bit too, and that was awesome. All right, let's get back into this, y'all. And if you hear the y'all, that's also an acronym from Texas. So, so that's I have that very ingrained. I grew up here, and so hopefully it's not too annoying. All right, let me move this around just so I can get this. All right, here we go. All right, so why college? As you're hearing all the, I mean, as I was hearing our parents that we have parents that has 2 engineers already in school, and we have some parents who have these aspirations for their kids. Let's talk about the different stakeholders, right? Let's talk about the students. So I know with my own children, as we discuss the college, or we discuss if they want to go to college or not, I don't know. I think for all the volunteers here, you can probably back me up when I say, as you progress, you're a different person. Like when you walk in that freshman year, that first day of college, and when you leave, and when you walk through that stage with that diploma, or even as you progress from freshman year, not knowing where anything's at, to sophomore year, barely starting to get your feet wet, to junior where you're like, okay, I kind of get a hang of this, how to manage my time and all that. But that feeling of how you have developed as a person and how fulfilling it is, I don't think that has a price. I think it just changes you as a person. And that's what I think the perspective I see for your children as you have these conversations. I know maybe at times when they're in high school, they don't see that. But as an adult and as folks that we all have been through this, through a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, I can tell you, it changes you for the better. And on top of that, social and economic mobility, there's a different way that I feel like for many that you just carry yourself. And let's talk about opportunities. I know when we're out on the job market, I mean, it doesn't hurt if you have more letters after your name. So I just feel like it's access. And I think having that access, and I love the word that they use here in the chat when we're talking about what you want to get out of it, that empowerment. I think there's a sense of empowerment. So I think that's for the child, for the student, for the individual, for your children. I think that's maybe a big why. Let's speak to the families. I mean, folks, if my parents, and I get a little bit deep and personal with my stories, but my parents, like, they grew up in the side of a mountain in Durango, Mexico. Like, they recently, like by recently, I mean this decade, they got running water. So going from that to in one generation, like I was able, with standing on the shoulder of many, obviously, because so many folks have supported me, to get a doctorate in one of the strongest economies in the world. That is all education. That is college. And so the change that can happen through opportunities afforded to us here and through education, it is mind-blowing to me how things can happen, change over generations. And then on top of that, it's just a role model. So, right? So you start going back to what we were discussing about the humble beginnings of my family to where it's at now. The conversations change, right? The conversations are no longer with my children of, am I going to college? Am I not going to college? It's more of a, what college are you going to? What are you going to study? And more importantly, what do you want out of your life? Because now as those opportunities are afforded to you, you understand and you start getting that intrinsic belief that anything is possible. I mean, like the young lady I was talking about, I was talking to right now, or she was sharing her story. She's studied aerospace engineering and lives in Seattle, works for Boeing. I'm like, wow, like talk about a dream. And I think we all want that for our children. We want them to chase their dreams and be happy. So that's another big one. And finally, the world. You know, as I progress in industry, as a Latino, we bring a different perspective. And it doesn't matter what your ethnicity, it doesn't matter what your race is, what your beliefs, but that unique voice that we all bring, it adds value to the whole conversation, to the discourse. So I think that's critical. I think your children, yourself, you bring that value. And on top of that, the value of connection. So I'm just thinking to some of the folks, some of the familiar faces that I just saw last year. I know I can reach out to right now, and I'm like, hey, if there's an engineer that's looking for a job that's a friend of mine, I can reach out to Fernando and say, hey, Fernando, do you know of anything? I'm gonna connect you with over there. So the essence of going to college, making those acquaintances, following it, going in the path not alone, going as it's a cohort. Like that's why I think SHIP is so important. That's why I think other organizations are so important, because you're all on the same path, and we can all help each other out. So I think those are the major whys for college. But let's talk a little bit about first generation college students. The definition that we use here at Equipando Padres is this is college students whose parents or caregivers did not complete a college degree. So when we say first generation to college student, that's what we're referring to. And in saying this, I want to touch a little bit on what are some of the things that students experience as first generation. I know for me, I was a first gen student. I know many of the volunteers here, from knowing their stories from the past, they were first gen. And I think it's pretty spot on, these 4 buckets that you see here. I'll talk to stigma, because I like to start with stigma, because I think for me, that was a big one. I was the first one to graduate high school. I mean, honestly, I was the first one. My parents finished the elementary education, so I was the first one to finish middle school. But there is a difference in community priorities for first gens, I believe. And in the sense that many times our tribe, our families, when you're first gen, don't necessarily understand that concept of, hey, I can't go to the carne asada this weekend because I really have to study for this midterm or this final that's happening. Oh, but mijo, why are you coming? Like, it's all the whole family's gonna be here. And sometimes there's a little bit of you have to prioritize as a student, and being into that push-pull, it's taxing on the student, especially for first gens. I think it's completely different once you're beyond first gen, because now, for example, if my son's at University of Houston, if I tell him, hey, come on down, we're gonna have a carne asada, he says I have a midterm, I'm like, oh, dude, I completely understand what you're going through. I remember those days. So there's that level of understanding. Second, health. And by health, I'm talking about not only physical health, but also like the emotional health of it, because it's a completely different environment. I think, especially, I'll speak a little bit more to Latinos. We're very communal. We're very much about we're going to get together. We're going to have a cafecito. We're going to break bread together. And going from that to many times, many of our first gen students going off to college and being more individualistic than communal, that can be very challenging. And that can really take a toll, not only in the emotional health, and I mean, not only in physical health, but the emotional health. And that goes hand in hand with isolation, right? So I think many at times when we are as students that come from first gen, we just feel like sometimes we don't fit in, or that I'm too alone. So at times it can feel very isolating. And finally, relationships. This I especially see with some of my friends or students that leave, especially when they're in like large metro areas and go to college towns, and they just feel like they don't fit in, or it's a cultural explosion of like complete differences. So yeah, these are definitely some of the bigger challenges for first gen. But let's talk about a little bit of the advantages, because I think there are some advantages. And guys, volunteer specialty, if you have any other stories to share, put them in the chat, or things that you think about, or something that you feel like could add value to this conversation, because I know y'all are way closer to college than I am. Your stories are probably a lot more recent and what their children are gonna experience. But I do want to speak to some of the advantages, because there are advantages to being first gen. I not to say that other generations are not resilient, but I think there's a little certain level of resilience that comes with being first gen, in the sense that I, in order to make it into college as a first gen, it's a little bit of a different challenge, I feel, in the sense that I think for most first gen, when you go through high school, and especially if you're taking advanced academic courses, at times we don't have that support at home to go ahead and help with the homework, or help with calculus, or help with the process. So that if you make it, you are, as a first gen, usually very resilient. Intelligent, I mean, that goes without saying, and that goes for most of our college students. I know most of volunteers here, like they've been through, I've heard their stories. I know everything that they're going through. Optimist, I agree with this. I think for the most part, as a first gen, if you make it to college, you have to be a little bit of optimist, because sometimes you don't see yourself portrayed in what quote unquote is a college goer, but yet you still pursue it. And that takes a little bit of an optimistic perspective. And finding change agents. I feel like, especially more in the past, maybe more so than now, but that could still be the case. I feel like once we step into those conversations and we put in our unique voices, I think the conversations within our colleges sometimes changes, within ourselves and within our communities. So definitely change agents. All right, folks. So we're about to dig into the meat of the presentation and the tools. So go ahead and let's take a 5-minute break, and Fernando can be your timekeeper. So what time will we be back, Fernando?
Yeah, let's meet back. Just I heard this a little earlier, so I know there's people in different time zones, so let's meet back at X50. So whatever your time zone is, it's X50. Let's do 5 minutes, and we'll see you all in a few minutes.
All right, folks. See you in 5 minutes.
During that time, I know Jose is going to kind of go off camera, and well, sorry, I was off camera as well. But during that time, parents, as Jose is going through this content, I know you mentioned it a couple of times. I'll continue to reiterate it. Please feel free to ask any and all questions in the chat. If you want to remain anonymous, you can ask it through the Q&A option. There is a Q&A. We can answer questions through there as well. I know Jose will definitely touch on those if questions come up. We have some volunteers that are ready to ask those questions to Jose if they come up, or they'll actually respond to them directly in the chat. This is for all of you. Ask anything and everything that you'd like. I remember the last time that we did this, we had parents just ask things that weren't even, they were relatable, but they weren't specifically on topic to what the facilitator was discussing. And so please feel empowered to do that. Feel like this is all for you. Take ownership of it, and make it what you can for yourself, so you can get the knowledge that you need. So with that being said, we'll see you back in a couple of minutes. All right, as everyone starts making their way back in, I know Jose is back. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. We're like 2 minutes ahead. So Jose, if you want to start at 52, that's okay as well. I know some parents probably logged off and are going to jump back on. We do ask that, like if for the sake of, in case, for whatever reason, if you can stay logged on, just, keep yourself off camera, unmute or mute yourself. And that way you can just, put your device down or step away from it and then come back. That way, in case it kicks you out, you're not having to try to figure out how to get back in.
Yeah, we'll start at 52 with the actual presentation, but I'll start just chatting about the chat. I'm loving some of the stuff that I'm reading here. Wendy, our generation was blessed. Our parents' hard work and dedication, absolutely. I think anytime my parents had that conversation with me, like, oh, I'm so proud of you and yada, 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 I always tell them this. I'm like, honestly, it was y'all. Like, I would have never been afforded the opportunity if it wouldn't have been because of y'all. So I agree with you completely, Wendy. Fernando, I still remember those times where I felt bad not attending Saturday night cookouts. Ditto, my friend. Diana, the guilt was real. Oh, double ditto on that. Diana, I took my calculus book, but realistically, I never actually got any work done. Funny enough, I remember one time because I was way before the times of laptops. I couldn't afford a laptop, so I had like those big old PCs. I remember one time I actually hooked up a PC in a quinceañera, got no work done, so it was a waste of time. And
the consoles, eh? You tried it.
Hey,
that is dedication right there.
That's dedication. I took it though. I took the PC.
You took the hard drive and everything?
Yeah, it was like with the
Soda?
screen and everything. I was gonna do work at the quinceañera. Nah.
That's
You
amazing.
connected to the modem or something? Like,
Yeah. The 50, and it was an old 56K. Like,
No.
about the floppies.
All right, folks. So we're at 52. So let's go ahead and get this party going again. All right, let's see. We're back on. All right, so we couldn't be an engineering organization without talking about engineers. So let's talk about what many times we throw around that word engineering, or many times, especially high school students, they say, oh, I want to be an engineer. So let's first start by defining it. So what is an engineer? And engineer can mean so many things, but in its core, in its essence, essentially, it's folks that dedicate their studies and their profession to solve problems by using specialized knowledge. And I learned so much. I'm actually an educator by trade. I did not know much. I didn't know much about the engineering industry. But wow, there are so many specializations. That's something I've come to learn. I think these are the four main umbrellas. And then within these, or even aside of these, parallel to these, there are other ones. But usually most engineering schools, these are like the heavy hitters. So you have your chemical engineers, your civil, and you can read under it what exactly they do, parents, electrical and mechanical. Volunteers in the chat, just throw in one word, what's your specialization? That way our parents can really see what you're working on. I know we have all kind of folks here that make me feel very intimidated with some of their specializations. More importantly, let's talk about what does an engineering degree demand. You can see here these 6 bullet points, and I think from previous sessions, the ones that I think parents really focus on quite a bit are the family and the finances, the 2 F's here. But I think as a student, especially our volunteers who are here, they can probably speak a little bit to this. I think the other ones are very important as well. Let's not even start with classes. Besides the fact that the obvious, that the classes are very difficult, it's always just even getting the right classes, this right sequence, especially if you're in a bigger college. That it's so stressful for the class part of it. Events, you have to start managing like yeah, obviously we say here it's very important to get involved in school and get involved with organizations like SHIP, other professional organizations, but then it becomes time management, right? Because all these organizations are going to have events. And then on top of that, you have your classes. And then on top of that, if you have a job, you have a job. So that's something that you really have to become very cognizant of. And then finances, that goes without saying, especially for first gen. Many times that's probably our biggest worry, how we're going to pay for all this. Especially if we come from a low SES household. Family, I mean, I'll be honest, my daughter went to a school here and very close to where I'm at, maybe 50 miles. And now she's graduated, now she's doing her master's. But during the bachelor's, I saw her maybe once a month if I was lucky, and we were very close. So the family becomes quite something that to manage and to be understanding of. Social life, and I think for me as a parent, now with college students, I actually start worrying about this because I see how stressful college is from an outside perspective as a parent, and I worry that my kids are not really enjoying the journey, and how when you look back, the college years are so awesome, and you get so bogged down into all the nitty-gritty of it and everything you have to do. But trying to really fit in some social, just getting together and reconnect with some friends, it can really recharge your batteries at times. And fitness, folks, the freshman 15 was real. I know for me it was more like a freshman 50, but it is real. It is important for all of us to not only talk about what we're going to do to make our bodies better and go out there and work out, but the nutrition. I think that's a big piece. I can speak for myself. I'm sure I can speak for many other folks here. Like when you're getting down to the stress of trying to study for these exams, you just start. I know for me, my biggest vice was those M&Ms. Oh my God, it was so bad. So I know we all have our comfort junk food of choice. So yeah, it's quite a challenge. So value of connection. I think as a parent, this is where I really feel that we can support, especially as Latinos. I think we bring so much social capital into the conversation and into the lives of our students and our children, that there many times when you go off to a different school where not everybody looks like you, not everybody speaks like you, not everybody eats what you eat. Sometimes there's a sense of belonging that is lost. And I think in this case, as us as parents and family, I think being able to, again, recharge, reconnect, and conveying that message that you, my child, are a part of something. You have your own community, and this is just you expanding your community as you go off to college, and keeping that perspective that really grounds our children and our young adults that are off to college into the why they're there. Also diversifies a little bit of their community, their tribe, right? Because up to this point, it's usually, for most folks, it's like a local community. It's the folks they went to school with, they played sports with, church, the family, all that good stuff. But now you're usually in a much bigger arena, and it creates a diversity, not only in geographical, but also in everything else, all other demographics. And productivity and trust and safety, I think these two go without saying. I think at times, I know that for me as a parent, going back to, I know that I could never actually do the classes that my own children were trying to execute. But as a parent, I'll be like, okay, what are some things that I can support you with while you're in college? and but more importantly, having that communication. Sometimes it's the ride can be kind of emotional in college because you're not only growing as a person, but you have so many other things going on. And just, I know, and I'll speak to my own daughter, she would always say, oh, when she did come visit, usually because she wanted to have a conversation. And it's that trust, that knowing that she was never going to be judged and just felt safe, and someone that just looked out for her and wanted what's best for her. And I think as a parent, as we support our children as they go through this process, it's important to keep that in perspective, that we're always going to have opinions, but ultimately that's my child's journey. And I feel, this is my perspective, my own perspective, that my biggest job, besides getting the pom-poms and cheering on my child, is providing a place they can come home to, and home beyond the physical location, home like where the heart location, like somewhere they can feel the trust and be feeling safe. All right, this is where I'm going to turn over the spotlight, the audio and visual spotlight from me a little bit, and I'm changing it to you. And I'm going to rephrase this question a little bit. For parents, I'm going to ask you, what are your concerns when you think about your student attending college? For volunteers, I want you to rephrase this question, and I want you to think back a few years ago. And I want you to answer, what were your concerns when you were thinking yourself about attending college? So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn over the spotlight. You don't have to turn on your camera if you don't feel comfortable, but please just feel free to share out. Just unmute yourself or put it on the chat, and we'll get into it. All right, volunteers, jump in.
I'll start off. Parents, please, definitely encourage you all to chime in the chat or to unmute yourself. For me, as a student, my biggest concern was I live in the Houston area, but I went to the University of Houston. I wanted the whole college experience, so I stayed at the dorms. My parents moved me in, but my fear was consistently that I was always wondering, like, are my parents okay? Like, are my parents okay that the fact that I'm not there every day? Um, I I did not I did a lot for my parents. My parents were both Spanish speaking. And so I felt like I was the one that would like answer those phone calls when people would call asking for things about their bills, you know, general questions. When people would come knocking on the door, my parents would always be like, Mijo, come here, like, come see what this man wants. So I felt like for me, my concern was always like, are my parents going to be okay? And it was kind of weird because instead of my parents calling me to check up on me, I was the one that was consistently doing the calling, like calling my mom when my dad was at work. Are you okay? Is everything okay? And with that, like I felt like I was putting more focus and emphasis on that than I was on my studies and my focus on that one midterm that was coming up. And I did see that at some point it did affect it. And so that to me was a personal concern of mine when I was in school.
Thank you for sharing, Fernando. I think many of us have gone through that story. And I love some of the conversation in the chat. I know Felipe chimed in and a few other folks as I spoke to the importance of trust and safety as a parent. I think these folks are volunteers bringing up some excellent points about also finding that on campus. And that's for some of the folks here who have been a part of SHIP. I think a few of y'all put down that those organizations, those friends within SHIP, that was your safe zone, that was your trust. So making sure that our students become a part of something. And go ahead, Saul.
Yeah, no, so I was gonna say that one of my biggest concerns before I started, well, when I started the college application process, was definitely just like finding out the most cost-effective, like finding a college that my parents could actually afford. I disclosed this in my group session, but both my parents work as janitors, so naturally they don't earn a lot to pay for tuition and all that and all those other expenses. So what I have looked into when I was a junior in high school, when I was a third year in high school, is just looking into alternatives. You don't always have to go directly into a state university, wherever it may be. You can actually first start off at community college, get your general requirements out of the way. It'll be much cheaper, and then from there you can actually transfer to an in-state school. That could save you a ton of money. And another thing that I would definitely recommend for the parents here is to look into organizations like QuestBridge and Thrive Scholars. I actually applied to Brown via QuestBridge. They offer full ride 4-year scholarships, which are amazing. They're really good. So I would definitely I'm going to actually go ahead and share the links for those two programs in the chat so you guys can have access to them. But they're incredible because full ride scholarships, you don't have to pay a cent. It's great. And what was I going to say? Oh, and sometimes people who come from low-income households, they think that they can't apply to these very elite private schools like Harvard, UPenn, Stanford, and also Brown. But the truth is that more often than not, you'll actually get plenty of financial aid when you attend these schools. For example, I'm attending Brown University, and the cost would be it will be a tremendous amount for my parents to pay. But fortunately, I'm actually getting a full financial aid. So pretty much, I don't have a full ride scholarship, but it's almost like I do. So don't limit yourselves to where your kids can apply to. Encourage them to still apply to these great schools, and the return on investment will be quite significant. So I'll make sure to drop the links for the two organizations I mentioned in the chat so you guys can check them out. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Awesome. So thanks for sharing, and thanks for bringing that. That actually, now that I've done my second round with college experiences, one by doing it through myself, and then secondly doing it through my own children. I'm glad that you brought that up, because me as a first gen, I limited myself to local colleges and universities, and as my kids have progressed, that was my own not knowing, my ignorance. I was kind of pushing that. Luckily, they didn't listen to me, and they actually went after private schools and things like that, and they ended up getting much more funds and it being more affordable going that route than what I would have thought would have been cheaper. And that was just me as a parent not knowing. I'll switch it over to Felipe.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, no, so in terms of my main concern when it came into college was really that social acceptance. And as well, I saw someone in chat talk about internships as well. That was on my mind. And so in terms of that social acceptance, especially hit me hard my freshman year, because my freshman year of college was the COVID year, when it started, 2019 to 2020. And that was rough. That hit my class like a freight train. And so that period of the summer where really no one was going out, no one was doing anything, that really kept me by myself. I wasn't really with many friends. And so that really made me know, hey, I gotta really be more involved in the community once they get back to school and join things. So, I started small. I joined the movie club at my university, and I was treasurer. And I really worked hard, especially that year. For our club was difficult because we couldn't use the theater we had on campus. We had to do everything outside. So we had to set up so many projectors and social distancing circles. And, it was a lot of work, but I really worked hard. And for that club, I won Member of the Year. And then from that, it ended up being a springboard to other opportunities. So for me, I eventually did Developer Student Club. And then in my senior year, I was president for Society of Hispanic Professional Engineership. And as well, I founded Alpha, which is the Association of Latino Professionals for America, which is similar to SHIP, but more on the business front. And so I really wanted to provide that value to students of all different types of backgrounds, whether you're in business, engineering, or anything else. And really one key point as well is to leverage every opportunity you have, and don't be afraid to try something bold. So in that time during COVID, I was an honor student, and I thought hey, what are some things I can do to leverage every bit of that opportunity? And so that's when I started to pursue a dual degree. So I actually graduated with software engineering and economics. And that was difficult. Taking a lot of classes was very hard, but I really wanted to do that. And I'm the first in my family ever to graduate with 2 degrees. I actually went to 2 graduation ceremonies back in May, and that was just amazing. Like, it was kind of surreal, like doing the first one and then the second one. But yeah, just like be bold, like try to leverage every opportunity you have. That's my biggest recommendation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Felipe. And congrats. That's awesome. I like one of the comments that Leslie put in the chat. She spoke to her concern for her child of, well, many folks typed in about cost and fitting in, but she put in something that I think many times we don't, it's a little sublime, we don't think about for our children. And it's just that many times for first generation, honestly, for any generation, many times as we're usually our worst critic. And I think as a parent, it's very important to keep that in mind, especially if your child's already in a situation where they're going into college, that chances are that anything that you want to criticize or critique of your child, they've probably already thought about of it, and they've probably already made themselves either feel bad or make themselves like they're not enough about it. So usually my recommendation from parent to parent is, I understand that we have our opinions, but at times it's important to keep in mind that our main job is to be their cheerleaders, and that more than likely your child's already thought about it and criticized themselves about it. So again, being that safe space, being that cheerleader, and being that person that you can trust as a parent is so critical in that journey. And who else wants to share? Levanten la mano, raise your hand. Oh. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I wanted to do a quick call out to Olivia. She had mentioned that her main concern is her daughter finding an internship because it says she's not good with networking. Olivia, there's and this is not just like a plug for Chef. It's more for like, there's a lot of different organizations, and I think I'd answered a question earlier where somebody asked about like, I said finding a home within your university is really important. And so finding an organization that maybe focuses on helping students find these internship or jobs. They'll do like, speed round, speed dating kind of career fair preps, networking opportunities. And I'm very chatty, but I've seen some friends who, shy as shy can be, and they go to some of these things, and you see them at these national conventions feel so empowered, and they're the ones getting the big job offers and doing all these things. It just takes a little bit of practice. Everybody is coachable, and I think when students see that their friends are doing it, it gives them a sense of empowerment as well. So there's always room for that to grow, and as long as she commits to finding a place where she can connect with people that care about the things that she does, I think she'll see success in that in college.
And I'm gonna turn it over to Felipe, but before I do that, I will pull out my pom-poms for SHIP, because I actually was not a member of SHIP. I didn't study engineering. That wasn't my trade. And I'm so jealous of y'all that got SHIP, because now that, like, I came back this second year just because I'm like, wow, that level of connectedness and almost like team and community and family is very hard to find. And for me, like I said, I wish I would have been a part of something like that. So I just feel like if I was a parent and if I am a parent, but if my child decided to be engineering, I would really push for them to join, because it's much easier to walk the path hand in hand with folks that are going the same way, and especially with an organization, at least from my perspective, I see as valuable as SHIP. That's awesome. So go ahead, Felipe.
Yeah, just on the internship front, like, it's honestly never too early to start. Like, I actually started kind of a little bit late when it came to things like this. So I currently work now for Amazon as a software engineer, but I don't think I would be in that same position if I had not applied as an intern, especially because when you are an intern, it is definitely a little bit easier because you're already in the pipeline once you get that internship, and so getting that full-time offer is a little bit easier, right? So I remember back in 2020 November, I started actually like working on my resume, and I wish I did start maybe a little bit earlier. Because when it comes to the recruiting process, it's typically like September to around January. So definitely starting early, it never hurts, even if you're a freshman or a sophomore. Actually, a surprising amount of sometimes internships that cater towards freshmen and sophomores from these big companies. I mean, just one from Amazon that is pretty, at least for high school students, it's called Amazon Future Engineer. Typically we call them the AFE interns. And those are pretty incredible because like these are students who are in high school, and then they apply, and in their freshman year, they get an internship and they work here in Seattle with us, which is crazy to think about, but that's also one huge opportunity as well. So, you know, always look around on the internet for any of these things. It's never too early to start.
Guys, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
So I'm the person that asked the question. My concern is also the following. So I have two girls in college and we're managing finance because our goal as my husband and I is for them to not end up with any kind of debt. That is the gift that we want to give them. So both of them have been working since high school and saving money. And so I'm talking about my oldest daughter here. She is a commuter. She was one of those kids that graduated during COVID and really messed up her whole like plan that she had. And she had a very like hard time just adapting the first years, but managing her workload, being able to get the classes like Jose mentioned earlier, is difficult. She goes to San Diego State University. Sometimes she takes classes from the community colleges because she can't get them in the schedule, and managing also her work. And I know she's my daughter and it's biased, but she's very, very, very hardworking at her job and everything. But I don't know how to encourage her. And I tell her, I know that you don't like the networking, baby, but there's nothing else. You have to, like, you're not going to go to college for almost 5 years to be an engineer, and then you're going to have a hard time being hired because you're not pushing yourself in that area. And I'm not trying to be critical, like Jose said, but I'm getting to the point where I'm like, you really have to do this. Like, how do I kindly tell her, like, just go out there. The hardest step is to put yourself out there. But she also tells me with my job and I'm a commuter, it makes it harder. Some of the activities just they're really hard to fit into my schedule. She did find you guys recently on her campus. So what I did is I paid her $10 subscription and I'm like, there, you're a member. Now go do your thing.
Go ahead. I don't see your whole name, voluntaria on the thing. So
Yeah, my name is Marisol. I would say, as a person who is very introverted and who also struggled a lot with networking, I also didn't have necessarily internships. I did volunteer work over the summers when I was in college. And I just kind of want to share that, you know, people are all we're different. I know the Hispanic culture tends to be very extroverted and very much about community, and that's super important. But I do want to say, you know, there is a space for people who struggle with that, and there is ways to be successful. Like, it's hard for me to like say this because I don't like tooting my horn, but like, you know, I do work for Boeing. Like, I did kind of have all these experiences. I also was not part of SHIP when I was in college, which is not, you know, typical for a lot of the volunteers. Um, it was not easy for me to kind of do all of this networking, and it still very much isn't. And I think, you know, having that support system, having people say, you know, you will find your time, you'll find your space and your way of doing it, and just keep being encouraged and keep moving forward. And I think that, like, eventually you'll find mentors and you'll find people who can help develop those skills. And I've been very fortunate to meet some of those people at Boeing who've kind of helped me learn how to network. And I think I would encourage you to kind of look at it from that perspective. Like, encourage her to find community first, find people who are with her and support her, and the rest will follow.
man, I want to give you all the claps, all the emojis. You said so many great
Thank
things
you.
there. As a son that's very, I have a son that's very introverted, and I like Olivia was saying, my biggest concern was the networking. But I think we all have our way to communicate, and I think that's what you're alluding to, Marisol. And you have to find your way, because not everybody's going to want to sit in front of people and be at an event and make sure and trying to shake hands. We all do it different ways. So as a parent, it's encouraging our children to, what's your way of communicating? What's your way to network? So anyways, I know there's a lot of volunteers. So Jackie, I'll turn it over to you, and then Hugo will go to you afterwards.
Yeah, I just wanted to say because I related to a lot what was said by Olivia and her daughter. So I was a first generation college student, and I had to work at the same time for school, and I commuted. So my school is actually like 15 or 20 minutes away from home. So my thing was kind of like the opposite end, which was like I never felt fully immersed like at campus. It was always like home's there, so just back and forth. So it took me some
That's right.
time to find like a home, right? And so a lot of people mention this, and I didn't realize until later like what that meant. But sometimes that could be just like finding like a TA position on campus, or like a small hourly thing, or just visiting an office that you like and just like saying hi to a similar face. And I think like what was said before too is like there's like different ways of networking. Because yeah, my first undergrad, I didn't get one internship. Is I went through a very hard like challenge. I should have asked for help. Didn't really know what to do. But then during graduate school, I was also very shy and still consider myself somewhat. During graduate school, I like pushed myself like during like the pandemic to just go to virtual things, and that's actually how I got engaged with SHIP. And then I became like a SHIP graduate representative. I went to convention, got involved in a lot of leadership things. So it was kind of like similar before. Like I had to do it like in my time, but then I also realized like, wow, like now I know so many people. And then finally in graduate school, I got my first internship. Um, so all that to say is that like, yeah, there's definitely, everyone's going to find their own timeline, but I think also just, seeing networking in different ways. It's not always just going to an event in person. It can be like sending a message on LinkedIn to someone that you like their career, setting up a meeting with your professor who they have networks, right? And then like the tip I hear a lot is like finding a friend who's like a lot more outgoing than you and just going with them. And like you don't have to be the one that's like necessarily always networking, but just being present or making that time like 1 hour a month, like seeing it as like work, I guess. And then everything adds up. So, but yeah, it's, I definitely can relate to that. Like just, when you're an undergrad, the time seems like you don't have enough, right? And it's just kind of hard to settle down and be like, okay, I do have time to do this professional networking thing and also do my homework and go to work and get some sleep. But yeah, so I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
That's awesome, Jackie. And I think I guess what reminds me of when I speak to, especially, so I speak a lot to students that are going to university, um, because university is a path to get through your education, a journey for that, but it's also a journey of finding yourself, finding your voice. And I think both Marisol and Jackie are speaking to that. I know for myself, my own daughter was very much like that. And it's funny because Jackie triggered that thought in my head, how she became one of the, I forget they call it, RA, RN, one of the people for the hallway for the dorms. And she blossomed from there. And now she's a completely different person, but she found her voice. And you're just never, Olivia, you're never going to know what does it for them. But like I said, it's a matter of if you keep on reaffirming, like, find your voice, mijo, mija, like, then you'll find your way. Eventually they will. Go ahead, Hugo.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I wanted to touch on a couple of things here, right? Well, the first thing being also having been a commuter when I was in school, I realized that like during my last year, I was like, you know what? I really wish I would have spent some more time on campus during my first couple years here, because that's even just being there, like being present is like says a lot of like where you want to be and where you want to see yourself. So I would like I know there's like a sacrifice with like work or like with other responsibilities, but even just doing homework on campus sometimes like at my university there was like a designated space for like engineers and stuff, so even just getting around people who are working on similar things as you could be something that can be suggested, right? I also wanted to touch on LinkedIn. I know we talked about it a little bit, but um, it's sometimes we do things and we don't realize the importance of them, and we would do it because we want to do them. um, but I think it's a good thing for you to share what you're doing on LinkedIn, because not only does that like have you like kind of like give you a reminder of things you do, like if you ever go through your own profile. But I've had like recruiters reach out to me instead of like me having to like look for people like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Like they're like, hey, I see you're involved with this or that, like we'd like to like offer you something. And sometimes it's not as like obvious as that, right? But they want to like set something up. So I would suggest like sharing those things on LinkedIn, or telling your children to share those things on LinkedIn, and that will like open doors that they probably won't even know were possible, because it's not always you reaching out. Like, keep in mind, like, not me, now that I'm like in the industry, it's like, hey guys, like we need more people, like, and I'm referring to, hey, we as in the company need more people, like more students, more interns, like let's look for more people. um so I would recommend that, like sharing all those things, and seeing who comes to them, because it does happen. So good luck.
That is great advice, Hugo. That's awesome. And I love something that Leslie was putting on the chat, where that sometimes we critique our own children. I know I'm guilty of this. What we see as a weakness, but sometimes that's their superpower. And I think that's the fact that you're still aware of that. I applaud that. I'll switch it. I think Felipe was next. Go ahead, Felipe.
Yeah, just a quick point. Yeah, I know, in terms of just like what Hugo was talking about, the community aspect, like I have a story of my friend. So he actually is the president for the Association for Latino Professionals for America at my university. So when I founded the org back in April, I gave him like the keys to that org once I graduated, for him to lead it on for next year. He's doing phenomenal work, and he's a commuter. It's probably one of the longest commutes I've seen, where he commutes like every day, like an hour just to get to school is an hour, and then back it's an hour. And on top of that, he shares the car with his parents. So it's a massive struggle for him, in terms of just like, you have to pick up your parents like 5 a.m. and then you get back home maybe at 8 or 9. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, he probably doesn't sleep that much, but he still is the president of this org, and he also helps out another org. And the most important thing, he tells us like, hey, you got to plan these things out, right? Like, and he sees the value in these opportunities, because it does pay dividends down the line. These 4 years of college, you really have to use like every ounce of it, because it's really the place where you get to meet so many people, and relatively easily. Like, once you become an adult and you already graduated, it's not the easiest thing to like make new connections, because you already have your job. And in social events, come here and then, maybe a happy hour there, but there's not too many other opportunities. Whereas you're in college, it's pretty easy, I would say, to get into these events that are usually free, and with no like cost or anything attached to it. So really, it's difficult, I must say, especially as a commuter, but it really is planning these things out, because it will help you down the line.
Thank you.
Awesome, Felipe. You just took me back in the past. So I know me and my brother, we talk about that we were drop-off kids. So in that sense, that I remember my parents would always work. So if I said, hey mom, I want to go to the mall, she would drop me off at 8 in the morning and come pick me up at 6 in the afternoon. And that transcended into, because obviously I had no right, there was no Uber back in the days. Into college, I remember my freshman year, that would kind of be the case. Like, drop me off at 7 in the morning, come pick me up at 7 at night, and just stay all day on campus, because I was a commuter myself until I got a car. So yeah, I commend your friend, and it just shows you how we all have stories. Y con ganas, when we have that desire, we can make it happen. I think Fernando, you were up.
Thank you, Jose. I wanted to shift a little bit and touch a little bit on that point that Leslie made. Leslie, yeah, I 100% agree. I'm a parent to 3 wonderful kids. They're still little. They're not college bound quite yet. I have a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, and I actually have a 6-month-old, 2 boys and 1 girl. One of the things that I wanted to touch on with that I think is really important is that I come from that background where showing emotion, asking for help, some of those things were considered weaknesses from just cultural, like from back in the day. That's just, we don't ask for help, or we don't show when we're in distress, or we don't show that we need the help of others. And that's how I grew up. That was the model. And so I think about it now as a parent, and you say that like we want the best for our kids, and I 100% agree. I think very early on, thankfully my wife was one of those that helped reshape that idea that when my kids are acting out, it's, real quick to say, oh, they're just misbehaving because that's a cultural stigma of it or whatever. And, don't cry for this or that. And one of the things my wife shared with me was very early on was that, it's very much okay for my son's name is Elias, like for Elias to show his feelings because he's expressing to you, how he feels. And if he continues to do that, then that means that he feels safe with you. So that doesn't mean that I can't, be the disciplined parent or things like that, but it gives a sense that I've allowed my son to like express those emotions because when he gets older, that's actually going to be a superpower for him. Like he'll be able to express to people, look, like I'm in a state of stress. I need help. Please help me. Reach out for that. And that to me was one of the failing things in college. I don't share this a lot with people, but I do share when there's an opportunity. I started off at the University of Houston, but I did not get my degree from there. I actually was academically suspended after 2 years. It had nothing to do with like the stereotypical party scene, had nothing to do with like me going out Friday nights or every night. It literally had with me, it had to do with me just sitting in my dorm, not being able to ask for help. And I would sit and fester on questions, problems. Instead of going to office hours, I would do none of that. And I would just sit there and I would allow myself to fail because I didn't ask for help. One of the last classes I had at the University of Houston was one of the toughest physics professors. And I remember that I needed to make a minimum a C in the class to stay at a decent academic standing. And I ended up making a D. And I went to this professor, begged him to let me stay or to what can I do to change my grade. And that man looked me right in the eyes and he said, like, Mr. Hinojosa, if you had just come ask for help, like that would have just been the difference in me giving you that fee that you needed to stay, or however it is that he phrased it. And I think from that day, that it started to grow in me, that idea that asking for help is okay. But that's a mentality. And like you said, you want the best for your kids, and based on how you perceive things, it's they might look, as we believe them as weakness. I thought of asking for help as weakness because of what I portrayed from my dad and my mom, but it's something now that I'm working with my kids to make sure that they feel empowered to say, hey, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to show your emotions if something makes you feel sad or something makes you feel some type of way, because that is what we can offer as a way to give back to your kids and look at those types of things. So I'm glad you said that. That really hit home with me. I think that's one of those that as a new parent, I'm definitely working on that because it's only going to help them in the long run.
Thank you for sharing, Fernando. And the chat, I'm just loving everything I'm reading in the chat. There's so much there. Like I think I wish we had 8 hours instead of a few. So, but go ahead and switch it over to Yves. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Please correct me if I didn't. Yves? Yves. I think you had it. Maybe not. Okay. Positive. I'm not sure if you're speaking to us or is it, but I'm gonna.
Oh my gosh, I was muted. I do apologize. Hello, everyone. My name is Yves Medrano. I'm from Boeing and coming from you from Long Beach, California. And I wanted to readdress or bring up with the lovely parent down in San Diego said, with her child being an introvert and having difficulty networking. And so what I offer you is more of a strategy, right? Is oftentimes I think we think of a big SHEP conference, a national conference, where it's just this leviathan of workshops and here and there and everywhere and things like that. I would encourage you to tell your daughter to go to her SHEP chapter or MESA chapter, or any I know there's I'm forgetting the name, but there's other organizations, right? I would strongly suggest to go with the engineering STEM ones, because oftentimes they have connections to people, like, for example, in San Diego State, they have Northrop Grumman out there, right? And so Northrop Grumman people may come out and give mock interviews, right? Resume workshop, things like that. And why I feel so strongly about that is because it tends to be a smaller group of people, and those people tend to be very like-minded and very committed to obviously their studies, their career, but also the organization, right? And in those organizations, oftentimes we find people that become our friends for a long time, right? That are become lifetime friends, that their kids will grow up together, right? That they may be a godparent to one of their children's, right? Or a tia or a tío, right? Just out of these small organizations. So I don't recommend sending her to SHAP National Conference or HENAG National Conference, right? I highly recommend putting her into a small group, right? Start really small, like the local SHAP chapter, right? Go to as many general body meetings. Don't get involved, just get your feet wet, participate in any workshops that you have, and just take baby steps to get that. And so that's what I offer you. And so I would actually like to hear from that parent if any of that was helpful at all.
Yves, yes, actually, you just mentioned Chef, but also I think she said she joined, I think I'm gonna mispronounce this, I always do, SWE, Society of Women
Perfect.
Engineer.
Yes, SWE is perfect. SWE is perfect.
Which she kind of did in high school. I really think that COVID had an effect on her because she was blooming in high school. She's always been an introvert. And then COVID, and then she kind of went back to, not being as out there. But she did mention that, and I can see though that I can use some of these tips, like start small, just go there. You're eventually going to find, even if it's 2-3 people, you don't have to have 50 friends or acquaintances or whatever.
No, not at all.
But I feel like she gets stressed out because I think this is her 3rd year. Yeah, she's a 3-year college, and everybody knows that you need an internship to have better possibilities of getting a job when you graduate. So when I bring up the conversation, I can already see the tension hit. Like, hey babe, how are you doing with the internships? Or like, how's your,
Yeah, I wouldn't. Internships are great, and they can there's an easy direction, just like I think Felipe was talking about, right, sir? But I wouldn't stress out about it.
Okay.
I wouldn't stress out about it at all because for a couple of reasons. One is there's a lot that goes into an internship, right? But to stress over it, right, and to allow it to crush you and to hinder any personal development, I think is not conducive to her professional development, right? And I wouldn't recommend that. I am a parent as well. Just to let you know, this is something that, granted, my child's only 8, so I went on the way. But I would definitely not make that a point of friction. Just I would focus more on her outgoingness, right? Her ability to communicate with people, because I will need some people who are already graduated and have some years in to back me up on this one. But your communication, that's ultimately going to get you up through your engineering career, right? Your ability to communicate, right? Whatever brilliance you have in your mind, right? That's the separator, right? To get you promoted sooner, right? The separator to demand more money, right? Because you can drive teams, you can make projects happen faster, on time, under budget. And you see how that just all flows down. It's just a cascading effect. So oftentimes, engineers find themselves as introverts when they are undergraduates, right? But they need to become a slightly more extroverted. I would say they need to become extroverted when they become professionals, because how do we know what you're thinking about? What's your idea? What's your design, right? What are the limitations of your design? How can you communicate that effectively, efficiently, so that everyone else understands and you can make that, right? Or you have a certain budget, you have a certain timeline, you have a certain customer, whatever the case may be, right? So this is starting off really small, but but I want to just really highlight how important that is, right? That your daughter or anyone else's child develops that, right? Slowly but surely. And I just want to provide you an entry strategy to getting there. And that's all I have. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all
Absolutely.
the feedback.
I'm loving all the conversation, but we do have to jump back on. So Hugo and Felipe, I know that you had a few comments, and I'm going to encourage that in the breakout. And I really wanted to mute that Dodgers hat because I'm an Astros fan, but it's the conversation for another time. But anyways, let me start getting our screen and let's keep on moving forward. We have quite a bit to cover, but awesome conversation, folks. And parents, thanks for chiming in, volunteers, and let's keep on this conversation rolling. So here we go. Okay, hopefully my computer doesn't start giving me issues. There we go. All right. So we're about to get into the next piece of it, but before we close out, I think this is a nice summary about patterns of communication and kind of speaking to what the conversation was right now. I think as a parent and a parent that has had students to go through college, I think these 4 pillars that are right here for a communication are very highly recommended by me because I think it's important to start developing it. I think our students and volunteers who are right now in university can kind of speak to, like, you start building routines, right? You have your class at this time you go to work, at this time you go to the gym. So you start developing these habits and these patterns. But I think as a parent, it's important to encourage your to create building those patterns of communication with your own child. So I know for me, like, and this is what I did is I would have Taco Tuesday with my daughter, and that's the day that we would meet up, hopefully when she could, on Tuesdays and set a time to talk. But the conversation has to switch a little bit. The question has to switch. I remember my kids were in high school. The question more like, did you do your homework? And that's very much a yes or no question. I think just as students or your children are evolving into young adults, as a parent, we need to start evolving the way we not only perceive them, but also how we communicate with them, because there's a transition that happens from being, I don't want to say authoritative, but that person that kind of like sets the rules under my own roof to being more open-ended and have those full lines of communication. And this should really be emphasized through the level of questioning. So when you start asking questions, thinking about how can I ask, or the questions do I ask, where it's not a yes or no, so it's not a shutdown. Because that student, your child, now that they're no longer a child, they're a young adult, they have so many things going on through the head, and it's very easy to fall into the yes, no, and not really have a conversation. And having with that is the feelings, right? We, like I said before, college, this whole journey is can be very emotional. And just a suggestion from a perspective as a parent is validating those feelings. And I think some of our parents in the chat were alluding to that. And I'm glad that it's something that Sav and Fernando talked about it too. I'm glad that it's something that many of you parents, and I applaud you, that are doing at a very young age, are already validating how they feel, but then carry that over into adulthood. And finding that support, whether that's articulated or not articulated, or whether it's just having a safe zone, whether there's just building that trust, keeping that in mind as you build through it. So we started off with the emotional side, and now I want to get a little bit into the instrumental side of support. So that's going to be the next section. We're going to talk more about like the tools that we have. So let's talk a little bit about, let's speak to choosing a college. How do we go about doing that? And I'm sure we're going to have some great stories on how our volunteers did that. But, and this is very quickly into the chat. What are you taking into account for all, especially all your parents who are like in high school age children? What are you taking into account as you help your student choose a college? And for our volunteers in the chat, is what did you take into account as you were making decisions about which college to go to? So go ahead and pop it into the chat, please. By the way, that movie was amazing. I watched that movie too. Money, 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 money symbols. Yes, that's a big field of study. Awesome, Olivia. Cost and Location by Felipe. Stay cool, reading home, Google. Awesome. I'm gonna keep the chat rolling as I go through this. I encourage you to go ahead and read through the chat. So on the journey of choosing a college, as you can see this slide here, we like to start with the example of a Tepos family. Tepos family is a family who's going to send their student, they're trying to send their student into a college, and these are the things that they're considering, right? And as you look through this, in this case, the idea is that the student wants to be an industrial engineer, but I think the other indicators here are very equally important, because is it going to be a different state? Are you going to live in the dorms? Are you going to commute? What kind of clubs do they offer? Do they offer the program? I know a few folks in the chat were talking about the program. Is the campus, do you feel like it's safe? Because going to a school in the middle of New York City is going to be completely different than if you go to a school at University of Arkansas. And finally, the just how the money symbols, right? Like how are we going to pay for this? Is there grants? Is there scholarships? Is there any way that we can get funds to pay for this journey? So I want to speak a little bit to the types of universities: academic quality, location, admission, size, cost, safety, and resources and services. So as we go through this, it is important to outline what types of universities we have. So you're going to have usually, I guess, the big ones that you can divide up into, is it a public or is it a private university? The main difference here, and many times there is that notion that universities, if they're public or if they're state, they're going to be more affordable than they're private. But I think as some of the conversation started earlier with some of volunteers, you can see that that's not necessarily always the case. Secondly, academic quality. So not only academic quality as a university overall, but in the specific programs that you're looking at. Then the location, right? Because not only you also have to keep into account not only if they're close or far, but if there's going to be like going back and forth, if they're going to come back for Thanksgiving, if they're going to come back for Christmas, the airfare, all those goods costs. And finally, then also the admissions. What does it actually take to get into the university? What are the requirements? Is there a GPA? What scores? And beyond getting into the university itself, into the specific programs, because within the university, there's going to be different colleges, like the College of Engineering, College of Business, that have their own requirements within that. And size goes without saying. So I think just how we were speaking to in the last section of, we all have our individual tendencies and what we feel more comfortable in. I can speak for, I have, at this point, I have two of my children go through college, and one of them, he was like the captain of the football team, very outgoing and all that good stuff. And the other one was more introverted. And if we were to take into account the size, like if I would have put my introverted child in a big university, it wouldn't have been as great for them necessarily as when they went to a small private college, and vice versa. So keeping that in mind, what are the preferences of what are the preferences of your child? What do they want? Where are they going to really thrive? Cost, that goes without saying. I think that has been our number one concern here in this conversation. Safety, but also the resources and services. I think many times, especially when you're a first gen, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you don't know that there are all these services that the universities provide that are there to support you. Whether it be for internships, whether that be for financial aid, whether that be your well-being. I mean, in general, I think it's important as us as parents to really, and as they transition from being dependent, many times at home, to independent, to build them to be very much an advocate for themselves. Not only an advocate, but really seek out those resources. What supports are there for you? And I think at times, especially when we go to university, especially when we're first gen, we feel like we're in an island, but in reality is that the university, every single university wants that their students to be successful. And for the most part, they're going to want to put supports in place for your children. But I think as a parent, one place where we can really support our children is finding out those resources and saying, hey, okay, here's everything that I see that this university has. Have you tried this or that? Or even take into consideration that when you're choosing a college. And this kind of echoes a little bit the type of universities. So public and private, and I guess in the chat, if you can volunteer, just put in what type of university are you going through? Is it public or private? Have you gone to a community college? And if you've been part of an HSI, a Hispanic Serving Institution. And when we speak to academic quality, it's always important to look at this. What kind of curriculum are we going through? Is it accredited, the credentials, the ranking? Those are all things that are going to be important. And if you can see at the bottom left, you'll see that the guidebook is right there. I really encourage you, once you receive these tools, to really go through that and dig into it, because there are a lot of great tools within the materials that are going to be sent to you. And then tuition. So there, for the most part, there's really two different. When colleges and universities look at tuition, usually they look into if it's going to be in-state or out-of-state. But something that's become more and more popular that I've noticed is some states are starting to offer in-state tuition for partner, like, I don't want to say partner states, but for example, like I'm in Texas, some Arkansas schools are actually offering in-state tuition for Texas residents. So it's keeping that in mind, that when you're looking at what are tuition rates that are happening for your the college that you're choosing. Furthermore, what kind of environment do you want for your child, or does your child want? Is it going to be a rural or a city? What about the transportation? Are they going to have a job? Are they going to have a job on campus? Are they going to have a job off campus? Then the housing costs. Many times, along with housing, sometimes you have to include a meal plan with it. And all that has to be factored in as we start trying to make these decisions of choosing a college. Furthermore, the sizes, I think more and more, and I see that here in Texas a lot with the state colleges, those class sizes are getting bigger and bigger. And it will depend again on the uniqueness of your own student, your own child, of where are they going to thrive. Are they going to do better where it's a small environment where the professor knows them individually, or are they going to do better where it's a auditorium type class where they're going to have maybe 2-3 exams, and that's the way they're going to be graded? I think that's important for us to keep in mind as we go through this. And as we get through admissions, these are some of the things as we go through a selection process that need to be considered by us, right? So I can tell you right now, the statements and interviews, it's becoming more and more of indicator and factor right now with our universities, especially as we go into post-COVID and everybody's trying to learn how to do society again, like how to do that part. I see more and more just colleges really digging into that. But that goes without saying, GPA, which is your grade point average, what kind of courses you take, and if you're also something to consider, especially if you have students, children who are barely getting into high school or recently in freshman or sophomore year, can they take advanced courses and also do enrollment courses? Many of our high schools now offer the dual enrollment where they have professors from universities or local colleges giving the classes, and those classes count towards their core classes in university. So it's also keep that in mind, because that will ultimately keep the cost down. Many at times I've seen quite a few students that come out and they have like most of their freshman classes, what would be that course load already done after high school. And extracurriculars are so important, but on top of that, making sure that you have those letters ready, those recommendation letters, especially like in your junior year, late junior year. I always tell my high school students that summer of junior year, they should be asking for those recommendation letters, because especially like for teachers, once the year gets rolling, it's harder and harder for them to have time to write letters. And usually over the summer, before their senior year, that's going to be their best bet for them to get some great recommendation letters. And placement exams. So another thing that might come as a surprise to some folks is many universities, they have a testing center, and you can go ahead and take exams there to make sure that you're placed appropriately in your core, like mathematics, different types of classes. So it's also important to keep that in mind as we go through this. So for this one right here, we do have a video, and I'm gonna go ahead. I don't think it wasn't working on me earlier. Let me see. If not, I'm gonna turn it over to Fernando. Oh, I did sorry, y'all. You know what? Let's not even bother. Fernando, do you have that video ready by chance?
Can you, that's the one video. Let me try to pull it up as well. It's a little laggy, but let me see if I can get it.
And then meantime, while we're working through the technical, are there any questions of what we're discussing right now, or your questions in general? Or Felipe and Hugo, if you want to jump into what you had to say with the comments on the other conversation as to while we get the technical support, the technical issues ironed out.
Yeah, no, I can go a little bit. So I was just going to drop in the chat as well, just a couple of resources like for Latino professionalism, especially now as now post-graduation, trying to find new hobbies too. So I'm starting to read up books on that. And one I read like last year was Auténtico by Dr. Robert Rodriguez. Really good. It's in English and in Spanish. I actually bought my dad the Spanish version, and he's been reading it. He's like, he really likes it. So that's definitely another one. And I'm going to drop in a couple other ones. But when it came to like A Million Miles Away, like the main takeaway from that movie is really like the 5 ingredients that the whole movie is based around, right? And when I thought, I was like, wow, this is gold. Like this is really something you got to really work towards. So, like the first ingredient is like finding your goal, right? Like knowing what you want, what's your objective, right? Not just in the short term, in the long term. And then once you have that, knowing how far away you are from that, que tan lejos eres, right? And then once you know that, definitely as well drawing a roadmap, like knowing like what are the steps to get there and how difficult is it and what do I do? And then the fourth step is if you don't know it, then you have to learn. Definitely for anything, that's probably what you're gonna have to do. And then the last one, which I think is good, is that once you think you've made it, once you think you've accomplished your goal, you're gonna probably have to work harder. And so definitely when it comes to like personal improvement, definitely, even if you've achieved something like amazing or incredible, always think like, what's the next step? Like, how can I go more from this, right? Always think big, right? At the end of the day. So that's just like the 5 ingredients there. And again, watch the movie if you haven't already. It's phenomenal. It's English and Spanish. So definitely, and it's funny too. I was laughing at some parts. It was great. So definitely watch it if you haven't.
Awesome. Thanks, Felipe, for sharing. Those are, yeah, those 5 ingredients are some nuggets. And I'll turn it over to Melvin. I see your hand raised.
Hola, ya. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Perfect,
Okay.
perfect. Yep.
My question is about writing those cover letters to the universities or reference letters to the people in charge of looking at the admission process. Is there like some other examples that I could show my daughters how to write these type of letters to these universities?
Great
That's my
question, Melvin. Volunteers, with you're a little bit closer to that action. Is there anything that any resource that you recommend when you're looking into writing?
I think I'm not 100% sure how it happened, but I think usually when you just ask a professor like a recommendation letter, I think they'll know what they want to share about the student and like exactly how much about it they want to go into it. So I think it's more like finding a nice and very like way of saying like, can you write a recommendation letter for me for this, whether it's admission or a scholarship or something, because they some scholarships do ask for like recommendation letters like that. So I think like teachers would probably know exactly like what subjects to touch, especially if the student gives them more details about what it is they were applying to, right? um, and on the topic of applying, I'm going to shift gears a little bit to touch on what I was talking about earlier with like going over internships, um and how Izo was saying it's not like super important like to focus on like internships and like stressing that. And I wanted to reiterate that because I've done recruiting for Ecolab, the company I work for, and one of the things they told us to like really look for is like that passion and like motivation to like want to learn. So whether like it's for when you're applying to an internship or applying for like a full-time job or a scholarship or something, really like, I mean, to the point of communication, which is a topic right now, what you touched on earlier too, it's like really pushing that like passion and like trying to be specific and like this is what I want to do and relating that to whatever role it is you're looking at or whatever scholarship they're trying to, like what the purpose of the scholarship is, like how you feel included in what the purpose of the scholarship is. So it is like writing it and expressing that sometimes, but even like in live interviews, really trying to show that emotion of like, this is what I'd really like to do, this is what I'm passionate about. And companies like seeing that because it's a way of saying like, you know what, you're because you care about this, you'll want to learn about it, not you're going to learn about it because this is what we need you to learn about. So just more food for thought.
Awesome. Thanks, Hugo. And Melvin, I'll speak a little bit too, and I think I just saw Marisol say something to this. Definitely letters, it's all about them being personal. And when you say that, one exercise that I would recommend you as a parent to do with your child, anytime I ask and this is for my own children, to request a letter or help them go through that process, and even for my students who are my mentees, I tell them to give them like a cover request letter, but also like an about me page. Like, these are my goals. This is where I want to study. These are like my skills, especially like that skills thing is important for put something there because that will trigger the teachers or the principal who's going to do a letter saying, oh yeah, when I think of Melvin, I think that he's very responsible, always on time, or a team player. And all those things are important for the teachers to outline or the principals to outline or whoever's going to give a recommendation outline, because they'll look really good when the admissions person is looking at them. But definitely personal. But for the most part, like Google said, this won't be the first rodeo for any of the teachers or people that you're asking for. They've probably done a ton of recommendation letters, but having that about me page will really help them to make it unique and personal.
Yeah, Jose, I'll chime in real quick. So before I joined SHIP, I was actually a physics teacher at a high school, an AP physics teacher. And when it comes to those letters, the teacher will always have their way in which they format it. It's not the student's responsibility to kind of come with that format. It's the teacher. The teacher will choose whatever they think is best as far as how they format it. What I would always tell students is that if you're gonna ask me for a recommendation letter, like I need you to kind of tell me like request it first, like ask for the request, give me a timeline, and give me how much time I can spend on it. And then the other thing is like tell me a couple of points about you that you want me to highlight or that you think are important in highlighting in a letter, because at the end of the day, you're gonna want, the student wants the teacher to highlight specific things, and so if the student comes prepared with that, like just like Jose said, whether it's through a bio, through a cover letter, just something that they can give the teacher. They don't have to worry about the formatting. And I never expected a student to come in with the format laid out for me. And specifically too, if you don't want the teacher to write you a generic recommendation letter, which is very common, student teachers will just have like a template. Hold on, I'm reading the was comment. Yeah, cover letters are written by the student, recommendation letters are written by the approach teacher, counselor, advisor, absolutely. And so yeah, some teachers, like if you don't give them anything, they'll write you just like so-and-so was a student in my class. It'll be very brief, it will not be very personable at all. But if the student comes prepared with content, that's to say, hey, here's the stuff that I want you to know about me, then it definitely helps the teacher to make that letter a little more personal to the student.
Perfect. And for the sake of time, let's go ahead. I'm gonna try to work this, get this. Actually, you know what? For be respectful of time, it's X05 right now. Let's take a quick 5-minute break. We're gonna jump back in and we're gonna get into the financial part of college, and we'll carry forward. So we'll be back at X10, X10. I'm gonna have to get used to that.
Hey, Felipe.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed some I had a misunderstanding. You work at Amazon?
Yes. Wait, who's talking? Just to make sure.
Thieves.
Okay, sir. All right, perfect. It's just Jose's on spotlight, so sometimes I can't see. Yeah, so I work at Amazon as a software engineer. Been working
Nice.
here at Amazon since 4 months ago, so on July 31st. And yeah, it's been great. I'm here in Seattle.
Nice.
It's definitely getting cold. Today's
Are
actually
you from there?
No. I'm from Miami. So I like my sunshine, the 305, Mr. Worldwide, all those things. But funny,
Yeah.
Pitbull's gonna be here next week, so I'm going with some friends. Gonna dress
There
up
you
as Pitbull. It's gonna be a great
Dale,
time.
dale. Con cuidado, vas a encontrar una esposa ahí.
But yeah, it's going good here in Seattle.
Which is a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, when I actually went to Miami for a couple weeks for Thanksgiving, and like for that Thanksgiving Black Friday shopping, I made sure to get my jackets. It's getting cold here in Seattle.
Yeah. No, thank you. Well, congratulations, man. And thanks for volunteering your time and giving back. So many people don't, forget that or don't realize how much they have an impact when they're first generation Americans and they come back and just, so it's awesome, man. Anyhow, just wanted to ask.
I echo that for all our folks here, our volunteers. Awesome. Thank you for spending this time. You're pretty much the core and the heart and have the best ideas and opinions for our parents who are in that path. But okay, this is probably the section that most of our parents, students, and everyone involved, usually it's costs. How we're going to pay for that for this journey. I know that's probably going to been one of the bigger influences in my own family. And before we get into how to get about paying for it, let's talk about the cost. And as a parent, this will be in page 35, 36 of the guidebook. But to keep in mind, there are so many costs that come into play, not only the ones that are just in your face, kind of like the tuition, but also like the ones that are not necessarily in your face, like your transportation and all these other fees that universities have. So as you're doing a budget, it's important to keep in mind, like literally like a little line item: enrollment costs, material costs, housing, transportation, fees, and also the fun part of it, right? Really get a budget. That way you can itemize, okay, if you're going to go mijo for 4 years, this is what we're looking at, the total cost. Once you have that, then you can go into, okay, now I have on one side, this is where we have to get to. This is our goal. This is a financial goal. Now, how are we actually go ahead and meet this goal? So the next column, and there's a great worksheet that comes in the resources for you to do this. And it's a great exercise for you to do with your family. And here are the 6 main buckets that I feel are come into play when you're speaking to paying for school. 1 is your scholarships. 2 is your grants. 3 is your loans, work study, savings account, and co-ops and internships. Keeping this in mind though, and I will go ahead and I would probably bet that all our volunteers has at least used 2, if not 3, or maybe even all 6 of these categories to pay for school. So when you go through this process with your own child and your own son or daughter, that how we're going to pay for this, having an open mind of all the different areas that you can do it. The one that's usually straight in your face is scholarships. And don't get me wrong, that is essential and it's critical, and there are scholarships for everything, and there are so many scholarships, and I think it's overwhelming how many scholarships there are, and that's why it's so important to start super early. Start applying for everything, because you just never know where you're going to be able to get funds from. And at times, especially when you're looking into the STEM careers, if your son or daughter is interested in STEM, there are quite a bit of funds out there. So yeah, just keep on I know for me, I kept the binder of all the scholarships and like the requirements, then the submission dates and the progress. Just keep that in mind. Then obviously every single person should apply through the FAFSA, and the state one for us is TAFSA, or I think CAFSA for California. Making you should follow that process as well. And then the loans, understanding the different, I think that's the next page, the different types of loans that there are, which are going to be, sometimes you have subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Subsidized means that pretty much you don't pay the interest until 6 months after, or you don't start paying the interest until after you graduate. And unsubsidized means that pretty much it's running, the interest is running already. At times, many of us, especially as parents, we feel like we know a little bit better. We are scared of the loan part of it, just because we don't want our children to come out with that burden. But also put it in perspective, though, at times, because if you look at the job outlooks, especially for engineers, and there are positions out there, keeping in mind that sometimes that investment on a loan to making sure that you can make the journey doable and for your child, it might be worth it, because some of the positions that I can speak, you can see from our own volunteer that they've acquired, will help them quickly pay off any of those loans that they have. And internships goes without saying. I think internships not only give them valuable experience, but at times can, especially if they're paid, they can really support. On campus environment, we kind of spoke to this already, so for the sake of time, I'm gonna go skip it, but I go through it really quick. But again, resources and support. Each campus has their own departments for support, student support, keeping that in mind. And it is so important to go ahead and visit the campus if you can, because sometimes we have our kiddos in high school thinking that they want to go out of state, and that's in their mind, and there's nothing like them spending a week there for them to realize that they definitely don't want to live there. So, but you wouldn't want to go through that process of getting admitted and actually going through it and going there and then finding out the first semester that you don't really like it. So making sure that you go through that process if you can to visiting the campus. So for this one right here, we're going to go ahead and I want you to start thinking as a parent, how do you feel, or as a volunteer, how would you have felt the best support for you as a student coming from your parents, or for a parent, how can parents help their students choose a college? So let's go ahead and on this one, have a quick reflect for like 30 seconds based on the conversation that we're having, how is it that you can help your students choose a college? Awesome. Let's go ahead and drop that into the chat, your thoughts as you go through it. I'm going to go through some of the main topics that I
Sorry, that was my bad. I accidentally
okay,
clicked on a button. Sorry.
you threw me off. Let me see. So we're going to go ahead and get into that information. Let me try.
Don't come back, or if don't click on it, just kind of skip it. Yeah, it was just a mistake on my end.
No worries, Fernando. Let me see if I click this. And okay. I think everybody's back. So from the parental support, it's very important to go through these 6 main categories, right? So I think when you start going through this process as a parent, it's important to keep in mind that you kind of become, more than anything else, also like a thought partner with your child as they're making this transition to college. And many times there's so many things going on through our high schoolers' heads, right? Like they have, besides what they're actually doing on campus, if they're playing sports or their prom and graduation and all that stuff, at the same time, they have to balance that, like what's next, right? So I think as a parent, it's important to kind of outline this and help them think through some of this stuff. So for me as a parent, I think this is a wonderful exercise to go through here and say, okay, what are your wants and needs from a college? So what is it exactly that you're aiming to do? And once you outline that, then say, okay, if this is what you want to be. You want to be in, like in the case of the Tepos family, you want to be an industrial engineer. Then, okay, how do I take what you want to do into what is needed from you from a college? You want a school that is larger in size because you don't want to feel claustrophobic. You want to have something that has clubs so you can really create those study groups and support. All that stuff, put it on one side, and then as you start helping your child think through what college they're going to go through, is how do you match those? Then from there, you create the list of what they want to experience, what kind of I like to prioritize the universities based on this list of wants and what they need. And from there, as I start doing my online research with my child, is which ones meet that and which ones are like our top ones that we really want to visit and find out more about. That way we can actually really hone in and really start creating our list of colleges that we're shooting for. I kind of touched on this too, but the importance of just visiting universities is just that, the fact that you actually see it in real life, real time, what's going on at the university. Because it's one thing to see the actual website, it's a whole different thing to actually experience it. So it is important that as you do this, that you start planning for these campus visits. So it's important, like in this case, that you develop a budget. The Tepos family, they want to go ahead and contact the campus offices to see if they can get a tour, when they can visit, what kind of services they have for a family that's visiting. Do they have to do a specific department? Sometimes you have to request a date and schedule a book actual time. Sometimes they have dates where they have like open house and events. So all the clubs will be out there and all the colleges will be showcasing what they do. So it's important to get all this information, but this is kind of like the second layer to that first layer of identifying what is it that you want and need from a college, creating that list. And then the next step is really honing in now on, okay, these are the colleges that we're really considering based on our research. So let's go ahead and contact them and start seeing how we can visit them. So as you do this, this goes into play. Like in this case, these are the different things that Tepos family wanted. Okay, so now that we have this, how are we incorporating all this into the cost and into the budget? And which ways are we going to be able to fund this, all these needs and wants? This is a great resource right here that you have for presupuesto, the budget, and this will also come to you. I would recommend this for you to use and make copies of it and create a sheet for each one of your college visits. That way you can itemize the cost. And furthermore, on top of this, I would recommend that as you speak to the colleges themselves and the departments for folks that want to come visit the school, to make sure that you outline to them, like, is there any kind of support from y'all for your from your school for us to visit you? Because at times that is available.
I'll say real quick, I did add a link to that budget checklist. It is
awesome.
right on the chat. Parents, if you want to use that now, you can definitely pick it up and download it, keep it for yourselves. A quick note too, just also remember that some schools do allow for students to have missed days, like their days that are accounted that don't count against them in attendance if they use it for a college visit. I know the high school that I taught at, seniors were allowed 2 excused absences if it was for a college visit.
Yes, and I'll completely echo that because right now I do work in a school district, and that is part of our policy. So this is an excused absence that usually doesn't count. Well, and at least I can speak for our district, doesn't count towards exemptions or anything negative that could affect them based on them not being there. So it's great point. Thanks for bringing that up. That something to keep in mind because many times our students are worried about missing time to do these visits. Okay, so now that we're talking about the actual instrumental tools, along with the budgeting tool, this is another tool that I really love that Equipando Padres has put together. And this is on how to pretty much a rating scorecard for your colleges, because you do your research. Trust me, as you start visiting, it's gonna start muddling like, oh, this school had this or this school had that, because you start seeing so many different things and it's such a short period of time that you visit. So it's this tool here, again, I would go ahead and create for every campus that I would visit, and I would rate it. Sit together. It's a very fun exercise to do with your child or student, and rate the colleges, and that really creates a priority for you of which is like your top school. And then obviously if you can match the top school to the cost, then that's your winner. But you can keep on going through it, and that way you really have a system to quantify what you feel the adequate fit is for every college in your child.
That one's also been added to the chat.
Excellent. And I think when you go through these 2 tools, specifically these two tools, I think this is something many times we think that like we have a bias just because of the marketing that they use at colleges, or just our own perceptions that some schools might be better for us than others. And especially I know as a parent, I try to keep my kiddos closer to me, but that ultimately I think it gives you a very much of a using a tool like that, it will give you a way to look at it that takes a little bit of the emotion out of it and more of like what's actually a good fit. And here's a quick example of the Tepos family who was in California, and they thought that they were going to go to UC Davis, but ultimately when they went through the scorecard, they saw that University of Houston was a better fit because they had a program, the industrial engineering program that they wanted, and the cost was the same. So I think it's very eye-opening once as you go through this process. And I can speak from my own experience from my own children. The schools that they thought they were going to when we first started process were not even in the top 3 when we actually got through the process, because once you actually dig down into it, you'll be surprised. 1, sometimes like money comes from different areas, but 2, once you actually start seeing the quality of the programming. So it's very important to do that research because it is a critical time of a young person's life. And I'll go through that. This is the main thing that I think from a visit, you want to make sure that you have predetermined. And the reason I say this is it's important to go back to that emphasizing, but contact the school, because you don't want to show up to the school and try to visit it and you don't have anything set up. And for the most part, most universities, colleges are going to have a representative or a department that's going to handle these tours, sessions. So before you do that, make sure that's all pre-set up, and that will be on page 46 and 47 of your guidebook. After your visit, go ahead and compare universities, document the visit with scorecards, and definitely, I mean, it's awesome to send thank you cards to every single college, but definitely if it becomes one of the ones that are top of your list, send a thank you card, and then really start working through that process. I know for us, what we did is once we worked through that department of visiting, we kind of showed interest and then got information of the admissions representative and kind of followed up also through interest form and thank you to them. I am not going to lie to you. This process can be very stressful as a parent, as a young person, as a child, as you're working through it. It can be because you're going to have so many different opinions, and what you see would be great for your child might not be what they think is great for them. But just keep in mind that you and your child, you and your student are a team. And I think it's important to, as the parent, to keep in mind that this is their journey and you are partners in this, but also at the same time not invalidate what they're feeling, because I think many times we run into that little trap at times as parents. Finally, the college ranking tool. So if you go to equipandopadres.org, I believe, you can find the college ranking tool, and this is the app and the website. It has a digitized version of all this information. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the panel. And parents, as you can see here in the conversation, we have a stellar group of volunteers who have either recently gone through this process of going through universities and finishing a career or studying a career, or STEM career or STEM career path. So in this section of it, we're going to go ahead and sorry, I'm reading the question. Is there a parent mentorship program? Can you expand on that, Wendy? I'm not sure what we mean. Okay. So for this next part, Fernando, I believe you're going to go ahead and we're going to ask questions, and then we're going to have the panel discuss. So our panelists here, I'm sorting through my thing, is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. We have Veronica Olivares, Yves Medrano, and Cassie Diaz. Is everybody here?
I believe Cassie wasn't able to join us today. I could be wrong, but I believe she was not able to make it.
Okay.
Let me just double check real quick. I think Cassie, you're not here, right? I'm just making sure.
No. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So what I will go ahead and do is I'm going to go open up the conversation and the questioning to our panelists. And then again, I just know we have some wonderful volunteers here. If you have anything to add, please go ahead and just jump in and add. So for our panelists right now, for Veronica, let's start off with Veronica and Yves. Tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us a little bit of how, first of all, like where you're at, what are you studying, and how the hero's journey. How did you get there? How are you going from there? So let's go ahead and go. Who wants to kick off?
Veronica?
Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Veronica Olivares. I'm currently in Cold, Michigan. So I went to school in California. I'm from, it's called Paris by Riverside County in California. I went to school there, and basically where I went to school, it was maybe like 80% Hispanic. So then when I graduated high school, I went to the University of California in Riverside. And when I started there, I was very cultural shock, because I was in an environment where it was mostly Hispanics. Everyone, for the most part, my classes were mostly Hispanic students. So when I attended UC Riverside, I was like, whoa, taken back. by how there was not much Hispanics there. At that time, I was going for mechanical engineering. So there was not a lot of females there. It was mostly male dominated, white male, and Asian for the most part. I think I had a similar to Fernando where I did not know how to ask for help. I was probably there for a year and a half and I was put in an academic dismissal. And so I withdrew from the university and I was just like, like to me, I thought it was like, I cannot do university. Like it's so hard and I didn't know how to seek resources. So what I did, I went to go work with my dad. So both of my parents, they're they came from Mexico. They were both born in Mexico. And I started working at a manufacturing company and I was literally just packing material. And then I eventually was able to like move up the chain where I eventually became a supervisor and I was basically my dad's boss. And at that time, I was making more money than my friends that graduated from university at that time. And I was like, why do I need to go back to school? Like I didn't see the value because I was making good money at, having that age. So then when I started seeing, I guess, people from corporate come in and I started seeing like, then I want to be them. Like I want their role. Like I decided that I wanted more for myself. That's where I was like, I need to go back to school. So while I was working there, I went to community college and I was just going like part-time while I was still working full-time until I completely finished my associates in business administration. That's where I was like, you know what, where am I going to go to school? So at that time, I did want to go back to engineering because I was like, I really enjoy mathematics, but I didn't really know what kind of engineer because I also like business. I got my associates in business administration. So I kind of wanted something that was going to combine both. So I looked into Michigan State University, and they had a program called Applied Engineering, and it's concentrated in supply chain management. So I went ahead and I transferred to Michigan State, and barely this May, I got my bachelor's degree. And as I was going to school for Michigan State, I was a student assistant for the state of Michigan. It's an office called the Office of Continuous Improvement. And basically what we do is we work with different agencies in the state and we try to improve their processes so, the residents could get better services. Sorry, I should have kept it more shorter, but that's pretty much my story.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. It's so interesting to see where your plans are and then where life takes you. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing, Veronica.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Veronica, for sharing. And don't worry, it's only two of us, so I guess we have a little more time between us if that's so. Anyhow, but once again, my name is Yves Medrano. I am a retrofit engineer at Boeing. This is my first ever professional picture right there in your slide. It's an honor and pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having enough wherewithal to sacrifice your Saturday morning to be with us. So first and foremost, thank you. So really quick, so I'm a first generation American. I'm one of 4 children, born to a single mother, raised in poverty. A lot of verbal abuse, a lot of emotional abuse, things like that. But luckily, at this point, I sit here as a man who's been able to get the help that I need in order to facilitate those emotions and go ahead and thrive. I'm an uber non-traditional student. What that means, traditional students, it takes about 4 or 5 years to graduate, done, move on your way. It took me 16 years to graduate. I went to 8 different colleges because unfortunately, I don't have a mom. I don't have a dad. I did it entirely on my own. I've almost been homeless twice in my life, and that's not fun. I know hunger too well, unfortunately. That's something about my path. Not to flaunt, but just to share some of the adversities I had to go through. So if I can't relate to some of you parents, or some other the volunteers, I do apologize in that sense that I can't. I just wasn't my part of my path, right? So I went to ultimately I graduated from Long Beach State University of Mechanical Engineering after I got out of the military, that was. And in that, I was able to get my position at Boeing, at the Boeing company here in Seal Beach, where I currently live in Long Beach with my wife, my son, my dog, and our baby who's in the oven right now. So it's great. The reason I decided to study engineering is because I'm just very curious about how things work, right? I remember seeing airplanes land in LAX and just like, how does that work? As a little kid, just how does that work? That doesn't make sense. How does such a massive 747 fly, land, and everyone's safe? Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? And so that's ultimately what really sparked that. The things that I considered as far as applying to colleges was money. We lived in poverty, right? And so luckily for me, I was able to get aid. So that's one of the blessings that I had. But that's about it. You know, as far as, you know, I had no car, nothing. I was on my bicycle for a very long time. And so it was just convenience, right? I did fall into the trap of going where I wanted to go, whereas I should have went to where I needed to go, right? And I did most of my core work at Cal State LA. And so in my heart, that's my school, right? Because the classes were smaller. You got to know your professor more, right? You got more opportunity, right? And so but just kind of harping back on what we were talking about, I don't think I would have done very good in a class size like at Cal, Stanford, University of Houston. I would have done good in the facilities because they have a lot of facilities where you could focus in on study. But anyhow, that's what happened. That's pretty much my story and where I'm at, and why I'm here today is to give back and to help my community out. I'm very passionate about being a first generation American. I'm very proud of my heritage. This is why I wore my cap, and not so much because it's LA. I am from LA, but as you can see, it's got my heritage on it. So that's about me. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. What an amazing story. We it's always interesting me. You never know a person's journey, right? Until you hear it. So we all have our stories. I do want to, before we get into more questions, I saw in the chat that a few of our parents are interested in either mentorship or workshops. We have an awesome team here, which is Fernando and Lily and other folks who are like full-time on supporting our parents. And this is just like an inch of what the work that they do on a daily basis. So what I do encourage you, and it's going to be at one of our last slides, but there's an email, padres@ship.org, I believe. And Fernando, if you can put it maybe in the chat. Feel free to reach out to them, because I know that there are always all these amazing events that are happening for parents. And trust me, all of us who are here on this Saturday, we want nothing but to be able to provide value and support to you. So we'll do anything in our power to support you as a parent. Okay, I want to get a little bit into, and then after this question, I'm going to probably open it up to, that's why I took off the sharing screen, to our parents. But I want to get a little bit into the cost side of it, because I feel like that's usually one of our big concerns. And for our panelists, to speak a little bit to how you actually, both of you are almost done or are half finished. How did you actually go about like paying for this when you were a student, especially like in the first few years?
So I learned the hard way. So I mean, when I was in California, when I got into UC Riverside, because of my parents' income, FAFSA was able to cover everything. Then when I was in community college, everything was also taken care of because of my parents' income. But when I got to Michigan State, obviously that out-of-state tuition is higher than in-state students. I decided to invest in myself for those last 2 years just to get my bachelor's, and I did what I could to finish within those 2 years, because now we were talking about me not being a non-traditional student, being older and having a little bit of income. So I had to decide on my own, like, do I want to get those loans? Because I'm going to pay them, I'm going to have to pay for them long term. So I was like, to me, it was worth it. Taking out 2 years worth of loans for myself to, get, because I had to invest in myself. But I understand that obviously it's a big decision you have to make because that money has to get repaid. So for my last 2 years here in Michigan, I took out loans.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing, Veronica. I echo the same as I said before. Luckily, it was a lot of it was covered because of my income, because my mom's income, and so that helped a lot as far as paying for school, right? Nonetheless, things went really bad for me, and so it's a little difficult for me to speak to finances because I had a lot more to worry about. Everything, every single dime, every single cent was out of my pocket, and so, whatever. Which is one of the reasons why I ultimately decided to join the military. I tell my wife, looking back at it now, had I known that life was going to go, 180 degrees on me, I would probably join the military first to get my GI Bill and then gone back to school. So not something I recommend going to the military as an enlisted person, but I was in a very desperate situation at that point. So nonetheless, I still pulled out student loans because I have a family, and GI, and I didn't have any more financial aid, and so my GI Bill and my love is how I survived for that. Yes, Melvin, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. I like your story. I wanted to ask you, how do I obtain information about like becoming an officer for my kids want to become an officer, like in the Air Force or the Navy, that other path rather than just enlisting that way. How do I find that information for them?
They'll honestly, once they're at the university, they'll probably get an ROTC program. They'll find it in school. And of course, you can just always just Google search military. Just, for example, it's Air Force and Air Force officer recruiter, not just an Air Force recruiter, two different worlds. Okay. And so, really word of caution with the recruiters, they're lying when their mouth is moving. So I know it sounds a little shrewd, but they have numbers to fulfill, and so they'll bend and stretch certain truths. The officer are a little more transparent. The enlisted, they'll sell you a dream, and when you get there, you realize it's far from a dream. But the ROTC programs are great. I highly recommend the ROTC programs because that's another way you can get they'll pay for your school. Right. So if that's something that you're concerned about, the ROTC programs are great for any of the parents that are interested. They will start drilling as they'll do military. They have military priorities while they're in their undergraduate, and then the ROTC will cover their tuition by and large, and then they owe them if the military funded them for 4 years, they owe them 4 years of service, right? And so that's what that. Thank you. Great question. Great question.
Great question. Are there any other questions from parents at this moment? Feel free to unmute yourself or go ahead and raise your hand with the emoji. And I will go ahead and start with another question.
Jose, sorry, it's because I got a direct question from the chat, and it's asking me, how easy is it to transfer from a community college to other out-of-state college?
Good question.
Well, to me, I think because each state has their, requirements as far as their the high school requirements to a university. So for me, it was more looking into the requirements that Michigan State requested. So I had to look into the classes I have took in compared to what the state required, the university, and I had to kind of go through their whole, like, which classes were gonna transfer and which ones weren't. So when I did apply to Michigan State, I got accepted into the university, but I did not get accepted into the engineering program. So that's something that you have to look into, that you might get accepted to the university, but not into the program. So that's where I had to reach out to the the person that admitted people into the college, and I had a conversation and kind of persuade him on why he had to accept me into the program, which he did. And he pretty much told me, take these additional courses at the community college. If you pass them with the high enough grade, I'm gonna let you in. So that's like what I had to do. So I think when you're gonna transfer after those 2 years, look into that program you want to apply for, and maybe reach out and ask what are the requirements and what do I need to do to get into this program.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Veronica says, a lot of colleges will have I think it's called GAP, a guaranteed acceptance program. So at that university, at that college, so for example, East Los Angeles College, Northwestern College down in San Diego or whatever, you have to enroll into that specific program for that specific university, right? Some of them are called TAG as well, and so or TAP. But look at that specific college and have your child enroll into those programs. So if it's for Cal Berkeley, then do that. Or it's University of Houston, do that, right? So, but those are probably the best way to guarantee admission, right? Because if you pass those programs, if you fulfill those classes with a B or higher, typically, you will get in. That's why the university makes that agreement, because the university knows that that college is delivering that level of education, so that when the student goes from community college to a four-year university, they're going to be just fine. They're not going to get into academic probation. And so that's something highly, highly recommend that you have your child look into if you go to college. So
wonderful tips, Yves and Veronica. I would moreover, I would say start usually when students or families are planning to do this, I always tell them to start with a backwards plan, a backwards design. So think about the university you're going to go to, and then contact an academic advisor there, and they usually have equivalency credit sheets from the local colleges that they take as credit, and then they can speak a little bit more to GPA bearing or not GPA bearing. But I would always say wherever your student wants to end up, start there. And based on that, if they're going to go to college, make sure that there's equivalency and credit for those classes. And then that gives you a list of what you can apply for in college. But great question. Other question from our parents.
can I chime in here?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to highlight to the parents is I'm going to only speak to engineering because that's all I know, unfortunately. Is oftentimes this, so I work at Boeing, right? I have someone who went to UCLA, Cal, all these top tier schools, right? And I graduated from a state school, right? And I can tell you I am no less of an engineer than they are. I had a professor with vibrations, and when I was at Cal State LA, I was a vibration analysis class, a 400 level class, right? It was a good class, tough, good. But the professor actually taught it was actually a vibration analysis at JPL. He actually worked on the Hubble telescope, right? And reducing the vibration analysis so that you can get a good quality picture, right? And so here I have a professor who's teaching me vibration analysis for something that he's actually done, right? And I'm at Cal State LA. Cal State LA, for those who don't know, gets dogged on a lot. They're like, they say, everyone gets in there, and that's for, they have some exciting words that they like to use that I won't use here because they're not appropriate. But just to let you know, that's number one mobility, class mobility. You enter, a lot of students there are poverty, and the moment they graduate, get a job, they're immediately middle class, upper middle class, just like that, right? Fulfilling the American dream in 4 or 5 year time, right? Anyhow, and he taught the same class at Caltech. Caltech is a rival of MIT. right? He goes, I teach the same material to you guys as I do them. And the only difference is the grading scale, right? So they aren't any better. And so the one thing I wanted to really stress is ultimately is if your kids goes to San Diego State, Cal State LA, right, to a state school where it's more affordable for you guys, there's no shame in it. Two, so long as it's ABET accredited, you can apply to any university, any company in the world, literally the world, because I mean, people from other countries send their students here to take universities, to our university, our American universities, right? So long as it's ABET accredited, that's all that matters, right? Don't worry about the title. Don't worry about the name. Right? Don't let that stress you out. Is it important? Sure, right? But at the end of the day, so long as that program is ABET accredited, is going to be the driver, right? To everything else. So I don't want people to stress out that they want to go to a Michigan State or a Yale, things like that. When when it comes to engineering, they will likely get the same education at a local state school that is ABET accredited. So I just wanted to put that out there for everybody. It doesn't make you any less or more competitive. The difference is the research that's available, and often the reach, right? So the alumni, that's usually the separate. I don't know, Veronica, if you wanted to go ahead and add to that, or.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think after that first job, after university, jobs are not gonna really ask for what school did you go to. They ask more about what's your work experience and mostly your personality. Does your personality fit within that company? So at the end of the day, as long as you have a degree, a bachelor's degree, that's gonna give you many opportunities and many jobs. After that first job, they don't really look into where did you go, where did you receive your education.
Yeah, I have so many people that say we don't care. Like no one cares where you went to school. Like nobody. It's definitely your personality and your professionalism. And I'm gonna go back to what I first said when I first started speaking on this workshop is your ability to communicate. You may be brilliant, you may be excellent, you may be freaking genius, but if you can't communicate correctly, then it's no good. Because you work in a team. Every single engineer that I've met has worked on a team. I don't know if any other engineers here can speak to that, but it's all a team effort, right? It's not an individual sport. So
Thank you for sharing that. And I've been hundreds, if not thousands of times on the opposite side of hiring folks for our industry. And I can echo to that. I mean, we can always teach on the job for the skills that you need, but we can't teach somebody to be a team player or to be kind. So many times as a person hiring, we really look for that, because if you come from a university, you have the accreditation, like you're saying, that's really what you're looking at. So thank you for sharing. So I see some questions here in the chat. I'm gonna try to tap into them. Fernando, if you already picked some up, feel free to chime in.
I think a lot of people were really a lot of people are giving their thanks. I will say, if you are considering leaving, I would strongly recommend that you stay for the next 30 minutes. We're going to wrap up, but we have a couple of things to cover. I know a lot of you were talking about like the support group. There's Jose mentioned that we do more than just this, and there's ways for parents to continue to learn and stay engaged. I know a lot of people appreciated the comments about like it doesn't matter where you go to school, and I agree as well. I think there's a stigma around that needs to change. There are benefits to going to certain schools, but I think ultimately it's the networking benefits. It's not necessarily the other parts of it. And I think the other part of it too is the connections. I know some people earlier asked about networking or their kids being shy or not networking as much. SHEP is the place to do it. My school did not, when we had our career fairs, we had two companies come and they were like local mom and pop shops recruiting kids. I did not get my first full-time offer until I went to a SHEP conference. And so again, it's the school gets thrown out of the picture when you join an organization like SHEP. I do see comments about networking is key. Let's see, going through it.
And Eves, I think you had
Really
your hand
quick. Really quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I do apologize. It just I got a DM from one of the parents. Just to reiterate, would I be able to share my screen by any chance? 'Cause I wanted to show what some of the someone asked me about the transfer program, the transfer agreements between the college and the university. So would I be able to share my screen?
Give
Is
me a
that
second,
okay?
Eves, and I'll get you there.
Like, for example, I just looked up one at UCLA, right? So UCLA has alliance programs with community college, and it lists all of them. And so that will help. That could help going back with what Jose is saying, starting from your end goal and working your way down, right? So
You're good. You can share now if you'd like.
okay.
And that goes the same. I can speak for Texas, University of Texas, Texas A&M, University of Houston have those partnership with their local community colleges.
So if everyone should be able to see my screen right now. So again, UCLA undergraduate admissions. UCLA is one of the most difficult schools to get into. They get about 100,000. They get at least 100,000 applicants for their freshman class. So this one's TAP. And so here, the benefits, right? I'm not going to read this to you, but just as an example, I live in the city of Long Beach. They have a agreement with the Long Beach City College, so I can go to that transfer center at the Long Beach City College and ask them about the TEP program to UCLA. So you may not start at UCLA and not been one of the 100,000 kids who have a 4.8 GPA, because that's what you need to get in there. Nowadays, you need a 4.8 GPA. You need perfect SAT scores. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best students, right? They're just good at taking tests, right? And they had parents who help them navigate, or tutors to help them navigate, right, to get through those classes, right? And so it's often one-sided. And so this is a really good way to circumvent the system. And I just really wanted to highlight, because that is money right there. That is just straight money. That's something that most people don't realize, especially as just first-generation Americans or immigrant parents, right?
Okay, y'all, and I started sharing the screen because we're getting close to that time, but we will keep on speaking and asking questions right now. I do want to share this, equipandopadres.org. This has all the tools and information on there. And furthermore, as we speak to this and as I ask another question, please please go ahead and log in and complete our survey. We are always trying to get better. I know as a team, as facilitation of everything, we really look at these and really hone in your opinions to how we can make this more valuable to you as a parent and for other events and other folks that join in. So go ahead and complete this. I do have a question, and this is actually for all volunteers as we're finishing up. What would be like your number one or two advice if going back to where you were in high school to get ready to be where you're at right now? So think back to when you were first starting this journey. Go, Veronica, I saw you on mute.
To me, it's to be comfortable with myself and know that, it doesn't matter, if I think a lot of the times, because the first time I went to university, I would put myself like, I don't belong here, like into that mindset. I don't belong here. What am I doing here? And to me, it's getting to that point where you're comfortable. Like, I do belong here. And, I have the same capability as a person next to me. Maybe we didn't have the same story, but I'm in the same capability of accomplishing what I'm here for. I think, just putting that mindset away, like, there's not many people that look like me. I think a lot of times we go in with that mindset, like people are looking down on us, when in reality they're just seeing a human. So I think just having that confidence in myself and being like, I could do it. If other people could do it, I could do it.
Yeah, Veronica, thanks for that vulnerability and that humility that you just showed. That's great. For me, unfortunately, it's a little different. I was not ready for what life had in store for me. And so I can't necessarily speak to that so much. You know, but the one thing I did want to say before it escapes me is more just I'm gonna just kind of skew away from the question. I do apologize. I'll say is to the parents. You know, I'm a parent myself, and thank you for being here. And the biggest and best thing that I recommend, and you this kind of like speaking to the choir, is just love your child immensely, right? So reach out to your child. If you ever get that one feeling like I wonder how my child's doing, call them, text them, see how they're doing, right? Even though you may live in the same roof, you probably might not even see each other for a couple of days because they're gone in the early morning and they didn't come back at night. You're asleep or they're asleep and you're back. It gets crazy. But just being there for your child in the smallest ways possible is going to be the separator. You're already here, so that's why I say it's kind of like preaching to the choir. My mother, right, would never ever have done this for me, right? And so again, just being that support. But yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and open it up to any of the volunteers who have more to speak on the question Jose put.
Yeah, I'll chime in. One of the things, I think if I can go back and think about uh, what is something that I look back on now, it's the idea of failure. And I think like Eve's alluded to it. You know, I alluded to it when I mentioned about my initial failures at university. Just like we talk about the fact that schools, or sorry, companies, some do focus on school, but others really don't care where you go to school as long as you have that degree. The same thing goes with age. Your degree does not say how old you are. It never will, and it hasn't up until this point. And so one of the things that I find very interesting is that we are right now in a in a place in this world where we have to be able to teach our children and students that failure, you know, you hear it in leadership books, but that leadership is a learning opportunity. Failure is not a negative thing. But for decades, we've carried failure as a negative connotation. And it is always, to me now, it is, as long as you learn something from it, it's not a failure, it's just an opportunity. Some school systems still see it that way. They're, you know, historically, they still see failure as a bad thing. But there are also some school systems that are adapting to that idea of what does failure look like? Does failure just mean that this student needs a certain type of support? Um, I personally had a dean at a university tell me that, you know, if you can't cut it here, you can't cut it anywhere. And, you know, a bachelor's degree later and a master's now says otherwise. That environment was not suitable for what I needed at that point in time. And sometimes people will not make that open and privy to you. And so you just gotta, if there's one thing, you know, that I wish I could have accepted more back then, was that idea that failure really is learning, and that perception that you might feel because of others needs to change, because it is so important based on anything else that we truly take that to heart, that it's a learning opportunity. It's not a negative thing.
And Hugo, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, that was wonderfully said from I wanted to touch on again, like I had to have internships to be like wanted by people, by companies. Something else you can take on are like leadership positions within school, like within the organizations. We've talked about getting involved, but there's different level of involvement, especially like having been on the board of my chapter at UIC. There's involvements like attending the events or like being part of the board, which is like people who would like the host events and reach out and all that stuff. So having some form of leadership experience as like being on that board or in any org, or like if there's something that really interests your student or your child, and it's like, you know what, like I want to start a group that really like emphasizes this point or this activity, and encourage them to get a group of people together, a group of friends, and like start something, and then it'll show more like leadership within themselves, that it's like they have the ambition to want to start things, and they won't be just waiting for assignments. And that analogy is to work. It won't be just waiting for assignments, but they'll seek opportunities to better themselves. So that's what one advice I would give.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Hugo. Jackie?
Yeah, for me, like on the practical side, going back is really taking the time to make those connections with faculty members, like your professors. I heard this a lot in the panel and then like also in the chat. I think one of the things was I had a really hard time as well, just asking for help. I felt like I had to put up this perception of like, I tried to do my homework, I tried to look for things, and then I would see other peers, like they would just ask the question and they would get there faster because they would break down that wall. And so like going back, just taking the time to just ask the question, make those relationships with your professors, and really being more of like creating your path rather than, like Hugo mentioned, like I guess like receiving like assignments or just like filling out a checkbox and being like a good student in that sense, but more being like you making your path for your career. That's what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Jackie. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen for the survey. I think a few parents didn't capture it. I also did see a question about what would I tell a kid who, as my development for a doctoral degree, like if you're going getting a doctorate. And honestly, it would be the same thing that I'm hearing from Hugo, that I'm hearing from Jackie, I'm hearing from Veronica, from Eve. It's just like you can do anything that you put your mind to. I think at times, especially for first generations, we have imposter syndrome when we feel we don't belong necessarily. But the truth of the matter is, as you get that support, I always say that nobody achieves anything by themselves. You stand on the shoulders of so many that support you, have come before you and support you side by side. So my biggest advice to that of my development, yes, you develop, but at the same time is everything that the folks are doing here is like, how do you reach back and support your community, support your people to achieve more? And everything that has been said here by our volunteers is exactly, it's no different whether it's a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctorate. It would be the exact same thing. So here is a survey once again, and I'm trying to see if there's anybody else who had any other questions or concerns, or parents, if you have any other questions, I will leave it here, and I'm gonna turn it. Yes, go ahead, Yves.
Yeah, real quick. Just wanted a little bit more on the parental support side. Of things is as Latinos and first generation Americans, or parents having raised first generation Americans, right? The one thing is when we're in engineering school, your child's in engineering school, please understand that they're not going to be available much at all. They're not going to be able to go to that party. They're not going to be able to help out setting up around the house. Maybe not going to really help out to clean up too much, right? They will, obviously have to do what they got to do as far as their laundry, right? But those expectations of having to do what they have to do at home is going to take just a little bit of sacrifice, more so the social aspect of it. I know we're very communal and we like to get together with, as many people, our third, second cousins and all that stuff. And so a lot of our family commitments are going to have to be sacrificed. Our own birthdays will have to be sacrificed. When I was at Cal State LA, my birthday landed on finals week. And so I never got the quarter system. And so, there's just a lot of personal sacrifice you have to make to the family. But when your child starts making, 83,000 starting, or 95 or 100,000, they're going to easily make 120,000, 130,000 when they're starting within the first 5 years of their engineering career, just with a bachelor's degree alone. It'll pay dividends, right? And so I know oftentimes it's like, I had to pay rent to my mom starting at the age of 16, right? And so so my academic performance took a dip, unfortunately. I got 3.0s when I had to work, and I got 3.8s and 4.0s when I didn't have to work in my university, just to show you that difference, right? And so understand that engineering school is very difficult, and just bear with your student when they're going through the midst of it, because it's not laborious work, but it's mentally difficult, right? I don't know if Veronica or any of the volunteers want to add on to that, or put their own spin on it, or go against it. It's okay.
I would agree to that. And I think that's something that I found hard because I'm one of the oldest in my family, of having to give up helping my parents and stuff, and then going to school, like making school a priority. I think that was very difficult. And I think if parents are able to support, like, and like, get that understanding, like, yes, you know, it's okay, stay in school and just study all day, because it is a tough career. Engineering, it's hard. So it's not impossible, but it does make it easier when there's less responsibilities in the home that they have to take care of.
Yeah, just like for example, on a Saturday, expect your students to go to the library, 8, 9 in the morning, and they're gonna get home around 7, 8 p.m. right on Saturday. And then on a Sunday, they'll probably be able to get home a little earlier, like around 5 p.m., but leave just as early. And so, I mean, that's what needs to happen in order to get through these classes, right? I don't know if anyone else had a very similar study schedule on the weekends, volunteers. Anyone had similar to nod your head? No, maybe so. It was
Yeah,
just
no, definitely isn't easy. 100% not easy, I would say. Especially for me, I took quite a few number of classes. I was doing literally like 2 degrees when it came to engineering and economics. And yeah, and then once you graduate, like you realize, like, especially as an adult, like it does slow down quite a lot. Like once you get out of college, it's one big thing because you don't have to do any more homework. You don't really have to study. You have other obligations to worry about. But in terms of like those like weekday nights, I mean, do whatever you want, right? So definitely as a student, I had I would say a much busier life than right now, at least. I mean, work keeps me busy, of course, but those weekday nights are definitely a little bit more free nowadays.
Awesome. So I think now is the time for a raffle or a giveaway, and I'm gonna turn this over to Fernando so he can guide us through this. I think Fernando has a little bit of a surprise for us.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. I'll start kind of, we'll work through the closings, but I'll say closings, but we'll be here for a few more minutes. Our volunteers and panelists will be here, and so Veronica, Eves, thank you so much for the time and for sharing a lot of this information that I hope parents you found very beneficial. As we start to wrap up, it's been a long couple of hours, but I hope they've been fruitful in the information that you've received. When it comes to the giveaway, I think with Shep, we're very thankful that all of you are able to be here with us, and so it takes a lot to be here on a Saturday. If you're a parent, you probably have kids in the background running around, making noise, and you're trying to, keep them at bay so you can focus on this. Them not knowing that what you're doing is for the benefit of their future, which is kind of the funny part about it. But thanks to all of you. The giveaway, it's a small, token of our appreciation from Shep. I created a little spin wheel. I wrote all of the attendees' names on here. What I'll do is I'll spin it. If I call your name, if you could just type into the chat that you're here, and then what we'll do is we'll send you a gift card actually to our Shep Mercado. And so Shep has a dedicated little store with like some pretty neat items that we have on sale there. And so definitely use it as an opportunity to buy something for yourself or for your child. And it's just a small way for us to say thank you for it. So I'm going to spin it. I promise you it is an actual little spinning wheel, but we'll see who it lands on, and then I'll call out that name. The winner is Melvin, you are our winner.
Awesome.
So Melvin, just drop a quick, I'm here, and so Melvin, we'll connect with you. We have your contact information, just to connect with you after the fact, and then just to get you that information. As we close out, we have 10 minutes. We'll stay here for the 10 minutes, and then we'll kind of break at that point. Quick items to share with you. If you have any questions, after this, first and foremost, I hope you filled out the survey. We really, really would appreciate if you could fill it out for us. I know that Sonia, she was here earlier from NAV. There's some information there. If you are a NAV parent, they want to capture some of that information. If you're not a NAV parent, it's okay. But the survey gives us an opportunity to continue to develop this program, to continue to kind of focus on what are the things that parents are looking for. It helps us to manage the time adequately and figure out where there's more time for parents to engage, things of that nature. So any and all feedback is appreciated, really and truly. So we ask for your, 5 to 10 minutes to fill it out. That would be really, really appreciative to myself and my team as we look to develop the program. Some of you had alluded to earlier to some specific questions about some things. I will say that right now, SHEP is in the process of piloting what we call Equipando Padres University. This is not open to everybody like this program is. Equipando Padres University is a pilot that focuses on just like how you're learning content here, you would learn it, but at the university specific level. So you learn a lot of very broad, general information that is good and useful for you, for your high school students, or even whether you have middle school students, whomever that may be. It's just good overall knowledge. But EPU is more directed towards university specific items, resources, and things of that nature. The idea is that the parent follows along the university program with the student throughout the years that the student is in college, so that when the student receives their degree, the parent also receives, a degree from us that they've graduated through Equipando Padres University. And so it's for you to walk alongside with your child to make sure that you are guiding them in the best way possible, while they are in the midst of their college degree. That is in a pilot. We have selected a very small amount of schools, like 4 universities that we are piloting with. And so that'll be something that in the future, if your child still has a few years to go before they get to college, this might be something that at that point you will see bear fruit in the future. But right now, just like we piloted this Equipando Padres last year, we are going through that pilot process with our partners at RTX just to evaluate the level of success of it. With that being said, though, with the specific questions that some of you asked, I know Jose shared the Equipando Padres .org website. We have a lot more information there. Definitely encourage you to please go there and check it out. We have communities that we have developed through WhatsApp groups, through Facebook, and all of that information is in the website. The WhatsApp and Facebook groups are specifically designed so that if in 2 weeks from now, I'll use Melvin as an example because I just won the raffle. But if Melvin wants to say, I have this one specific question because my child's counselor said this, and I want to verify whether or not this is true. You could either type it on the WhatsApp or you can go to the Facebook group and type it there. And that's more of like a live, it's monitored consistently and we look at it and we just answer questions on the fly. So you don't have to wait for a programming like this to come up. You can just ask questions if something comes up and you would like to get it answered. Those resources are available through our website. And then the email that was shared, padres@shift.org. If you have anything specific you want to ask myself or the team, myself, Lily, or Dinah, those are things that you can ask us there, and we can answer questions along the way as well. But we'll be here for the next 5 minutes. I personally want to thank Jose as our facilitator for today. I want to thank our volunteers, our panelists, those that gave time on this side, on our side to support for you parents that really gave up the time today to join us and to really use it as a tool to benefit your children. I can't speak enough as to like the testament of what that shows to all of you. If you are, you know, parents of a college-bound first-generation college student, you know, kudos to you. It's a true testament to what, you know, what you are doing to make sure that your children are successful in the future. So we'll be around for the next 5 or so minutes. If any of you parents have specific questions, you can use the chat feature, you can drop DMs, direct messages, or you can just unmute yourself and we can have a conversation here. Excuse me, but thank you again. Really appreciate your time. This will conclude the formal portion of it. I will stop the recording, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask away.